Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Naruto, Orochimaru Disciple, awakened extraordinary enlightenment talent at first. Chapter 81. In the yard, Ishihara looked at this scene but was not surprised. Because the shadow imitation technique was so powerful, but because his chakra was enough, that's all. In Bleach, Aizen once said that the battle of the Bleach was a battle of spiritual pressure. It was almost the same for ninjas. The battle of ninjas was a battle of chakra. For the same ninjutsu, if the amount of chakra you output increased tenfold, the power of the ninjutsu would naturally be incomparable. And his current behavior was just to verify this statement. Whoosh! Suddenly, the huge black flame in the air turned into a huge black spear that stretched across the void, and it was thrown into the distance and fiercely pierced into a hill outside Konoha. Boom! The hill was instantly pierced. Then, cracks appeared on the entire hill, and finally shattered and collapsed. Another mountain. The corner of the third Hokage's mouth twitched. Does it mean that now we have to smash a mountain to verify whether the ninjutsu is strong or not? It must be said that this power is indeed shocking. Especially Nara Shikaku was so excited, but he soon calmed down. Because he knew that the Nara family did not have such a strong chakra, they did not need this kind of secret technique. Ishihara naturally understood this, so he immediately lifted it after verifying the attack power of the shadow. According to the deal, he had to develop a secret technique suitable for the Nara family. Various abilities of many anime he had watched in his previous life flooded into his mind. Especially the ability of Gecko Mariah and the ability of Shadow Dragon in Fairy Tail. Ishihara controlled his own shadow and began to try to deduce new secret techniques, starting with imitation. First of all, we need to make the shape of the shadow easier to control and shape. It needs to be set in advance before the yin release chakra changes. The attack power of the shadow is already strong enough, even if it is not changed, it is defense. The simplest defense is to use the shadow for defense. And increase the area of the shadow. A lot of spiritual light flashed and collided in Ishihara's mind, and he was constantly trying to create new secret techniques. Nara Shikaku was completely stunned when he saw the shadow being played with in Ishihara's hands. There was only one thought left in his mind, so the shadow can be used like this. I don't know how long it took. Ishihara finally stopped and let out a long breath. At the same time, a lot of information poured into his mind. You try to shape the appearance of the shadow, you create the secret technique shadow shaping technique. You try to use the shadow to form a defense, you create the secret technique shadow wall. You simulated the moves you saw in your previous life with yin release chakra, you created the secret technique shadow aggregate. You combined the physical technique inspiration from before with the Nara secret technique, and you had an epiphany. You created the secret technique shadow dancer. You had an epiphany. You created the secret technique shadow amplification technique. You had an epiphany. You created the secret technique shadow control technique. You had an epiphany. You created the secret technique shadow training method. Shadow amplification technique. After mastering it, you can at least double the area of the shadow. Shadow aggregate. Gather a large number of shadows around to form a human form. The more shadows there are, the stronger the strength. You can use all the ninjutsu of the caster, not fear of physical attacks. Shadow dancer. By wrapping a large number of shadows or shadow combinations around the body surface, the physical ability is greatly increased, and the offensive and defensive capabilities are greatly improved. Shadow control technique. After mastering it, you can skillfully control the shadow and perform various secret techniques of the Nara family. Shadow training method. After practicing, you can increase the control over the shadow and improve the fit of your own secret techniques. It is a professional training guide for Nara's secret techniques. Looking at this large amount of information, Ishihara is very clear that he has not yet discovered the true secrets of these secret techniques. A thought flashed through his mind: people can turn into water, so can they turn into shadows? But it was just a thought, because he knew very well that this was not something he could study now. Ishihara stood up and said, "It's over. I'll tell you about these secret techniques in general." Lu's dull eyes gradually became smart, and he looked at Ishihara and smiled bitterly. Just now, he witnessed with his own eyes how Ishihara learned the secret techniques of his family, mastered them in a very short time, and surpassed them. Even now, it's incredible to think about it. Lu Ju took a long breath, cheered up, and took the initiative to come to the center of the seal. Don't say anything, Mr. Ishihara, I just saw it, I am very satisfied with the secret technique, please start the seal. Ishihara was stunned, then nodded, this is the best. He did not completely develop a new secret technique for the Luju family's secret technique, after all, the system is complete. But he raised the power and potential of the original secret technique by one level or even more. For the Nara clan, the most potential is the shadow gathering place. But for me, the most potential is the shadow dancer. Ishihara recalled the relevant information about the shadow dancer in his mind, and his eyes flashed. The deduction of the shadow dancer could have been further, but he took the initiative to interrupt the process. Because he found that perhaps the shadow dancer had a stronger direction. However, this secret technique cannot be completed by the secret technique of the Nara family alone. He needs other secret techniques. Ishihara suddenly thought of the Akamichi clan waiting outside, and his eyes lit up immediately. Perhaps the opportunity lies in the secret technique of the Akamichi clan. But there is no rush now. Chief Hiyashi and the people of the sealing team, please come in. Shikaku shouted. When performing the sealing technique, it is still safer to have people from Konoha around, even though he knows that Ishihara is unlikely to do anything to him. Ishihara didn't care. After Hinata Hiyashi and others came in, he came to Shikaku and performed the sealing technique. Then he handed several secret techniques to Shikaku. The people from the sealing class and Hyuga Hiyashi nodded to Shikaku, indicating that there was no problem with the seal. Shikaku breathed a sigh of relief and said solemnly, Mr. Ishihara, thank you. Ishihara waved his hand, it's just a deal. The shadow imitation technique of the Nara clan allowed him to further his research on Yinten chakra, and he was very satisfied with the deal. Knowing that Shikaku's deal was completed, the third Hokage and others rushed in, and some gathered around Shikaku to ask about the situation. Some people came to Ishihara to complete the deal. The third Hokage was one of them. He stood in front of Ishihara and said in a deep voice, Ishihara, I want to trade with you using Konoha's secrets and forbidden techniques, but I want to change the conditions. Ishihara frowned, how do you want to change it? The third Hokage hurriedly said, these secrets and forbidden techniques are owned by Konoha, and I hope to pass them on to more people. One of the mechanisms of the ninja village is to use powerful ninjutsu as a reward to drive ninjas to perform difficult tasks. Even if these secret or forbidden techniques have been improved, the person who uses them will not be the third Hokage himself. He needs to be able to pass them on to others. Ishihara also knew this. If he didn't agree, the third Hokage might not make a deal. He thought for a while and said, I can write these improved secret or forbidden techniques into the sealing scroll. Each sealing scroll can be passed on 3 times and can be replenished every 10 years. As long as the sealing scroll is still there, these ninjutsu can be passed on forever. Although he agreed to the deal, he didn't want the secret techniques he developed to become something that was commonplace. The third Hokage still wanted to argue with reason and even wanted to seal without using the sealing technique. Ishihara sneered and didn't give in at all. The two of them were in a stalemate. In the end, the third Hokage took a step back and agreed to Ishihara's conditions. The third Hokage said solemnly, the first forbidden technique I want to trade with you is the 8 gates. Ishihara was stunned, then sneered, no, this secret technique Might Guy has already traded with me, and it has no effect on me. What? The third Hokage was stunned, and his face was completely stiff. Ishihara said lightly, the purpose of my wanting these secret techniques is for research. Things that are useless to me are naturally not worth trading. Otherwise, what's the point of me using the sealing technique? The third Hokage was immediately anxious, and his face turned red with excitement. But the 8 gates is also a forbidden technique in the village, not just Might Guy's. He couldn't help but be anxious, because this meant that the village had lost a forbidden technique inheritance, and it was an extremely powerful forbidden technique. Ishihara shook his head calmly, I don't care about that, go find Might Guy. The third Hokage was extremely angry, and his face froze when he saw Might Guy, who was still a little weak next to him. Might Guy now has opened the 7th gate, and will soon be able to open the 8th gate. He can even be said to be Konoha's highest combat power. The pillar. Even if he is the Hokage, he doesn't want to have a grudge against such a person. What's more, even if other people in Konoha except Might Guy get the inheritance, it is impossible to practice to the 8th gate. Naturally, he can't let Might Guy contribute the opportunity of inheritance. The 3rd Hokage can trade with a secret technique or forbidden technique, and the sooner the better, otherwise others may get ahead. Ishihara said meaningfully. Although Konoha has many secret techniques and forbidden techniques, there are actually only a few that are really useful to him. There are even fewer that can interest him. But the people who have the right to read those forbidden techniques in Konoha are not only the 3rd Hokage, but also Danzo, Udatain Kaharu, and Mitomen En. Just because the 3rd Hokage doesn't use it doesn't mean that others won't trade with him. The 3rd Hokage naturally understood what he meant when he heard it, and his face changed slightly, and he said anxiously, "Okay, I'll change to another secret technique, the 2nd Hokage's water style, water-breaking wave." Ishihara shook his head when he heard it. "This ninjutsu has no meaning to me, and has no exchange value." The 3rd Hokage's expression froze, and he could only continue to say aggrievedly, then change to another one, the 1st Hokage's strange power. "I've mastered it. Water style, no value. Fire style, no value. 5 styles great linking bullet technique. No meaning." Ishihara was disgusted with the 5 styles great linking bullet that the 3rd Hokage was proud of. The 3rd Hokage was furious. "Diaresis, these are Konoha's top ninjutsu, but they don't work." "Then what can work?" Ishihara said calmly. "Flying Thunder God technique, Jinchuriki sealing technique, would release." The 3rd Hokage's face changed wildly, staring at him in shock and anger. These are the real foundation of Konoha. It's a matter of great importance, how could he hand them over easily? But if he doesn't take them out, he really has nothing to trade. The 3rd Hokage was in hesitation. "I'll think about it." Hinata Hiyashi and others beside him naturally heard the conversation between the two, and they were not only a little shocked in their hearts. Ishihara's high requirements for the secret techniques and forbidden techniques of the transaction made them secretly shocked even if they had expected it. The 3rd Hokage was still hesitating, and he asked someone to call the other 3 consultants. But at this time, Fugaku stepped forward. "Since Lord Hokage doesn't want to trade, please get out of the way, I'll do it." "You." The 3rd Hokage stared at him angrily, but Fugaku didn't care. The two of them have already torn their faces apart, and now it's a race against time. How can he be humble? Jiao. This morning he had just finished hypnotizing the clan members who were willing to open the Mangekyo, so he hurriedly brought it. Ishihara glanced at Fugaku and the Uchiha clan member next to him, and was immediately refreshed. "It seems that new physical materials are coming. Everyone else go out, the Uchiha clan can stay." Although the 3rd Hokage was reluctant, he was still pulled away by the patriarchs of several other major families to vent his anger. The Nara clan has completed the transaction with Ishihara, and its strength will surely be improved in the next period of time. But they haven't completed the transaction yet. How can the 3rd Hokage and Ishihara conflict? Soon, only Ishihara and Uchiha Fugaku, as well as the 2 people beside him, were left in the yard. A young man, Uchiha Inahiro. A middle-aged man, the 2nd elder of Uchiha. "Do you still want to open the Mangekyo Sharingan this time?" Fugaku nodded. "Yes, both of them." Ishihara looked at the 2 people beside him and shook his head. Fugaku's heart sank, and he hurriedly asked, "What's wrong?" Ishihara pointed at the 2nd elder of Uchiha and said, "He is too old, and he can't support the opening of the Mangekyo, so there is no need to waste my time." "You." The 2nd elder of Uchiha was a little angry. He came here with great determination, but he was rejected. "It's so shameful." Fugaku hurriedly stepped forward to stop him, then pointed at a young man and asked, "What about Inahiro, is it okay?" Uchiha Inahiro looked at Ishihara nervously. The horrific scene of facing Juhara with Tiehuo last time was still in front of him, and now it was possible that he couldn't open the Mangekyo. He felt that his heart was about to jump out. "Yes," Ishihara said lightly. What he didn't tell Fugaku was that opening the Mangekyo was not just a matter of paying a price, but also depended on talent. If the talent was not good, he would not be able to open it even if he exhausted all his life, which would only waste his time. And Inahiro was able to open the 3 Magatama at the age of about, and became a squad leader of the police force, so his talent was naturally qualified. Anahiro and Fugaku were relieved and even a little happy when they heard this. Come on, sit down in front of me. Ishihara pointed to the grass in front and said. Anahiro hurried over to sit down, looking a little nervous. Ishihara cast a barrier again to cover the two of them, and his voice could not be transmitted. Then he began to explain the secret technique to Uchiha Tiehuo and guided him to master it quickly. With the experience from the last time, Daohuo mastered it faster this time. Like Tiehuo, he only knew how to use the secret technique, but he didn't understand the principle of the secret technique at all. Buzz. Ishihara cast the illusion space again and pulled Anahiro in. He learned from the failure of the last experiment. This time, he used Mirror Flower Water Moon to interfere with the opponent's 5 senses, reducing the difficulty of hypnosis. Then he began to hypnotize the opponent and plant the seeds. You want to copy all the secret techniques of the ninja world, protect the Uchiha clan, and defeat the Konoha high-level officials. After doing this, Ishihara breathed a sigh of relief. He had done everything he could, and the next thing was to leave it to fate. As a deal, I will help you open the Mangekyo, and then you just need to use all your strength to operate the secret technique. Yes. Hearing this, Anahiro took a deep breath and then activated the secret technique. Hiss. The intense pain swept through his body, making his whole face twisted. This time, Ishihara saw more clearly through the white eyes, and was shocked. Sure enough, it's just like when the 8th gate of the 8 gates of Dunjia is opened. This secret technique is madly extracting his life energy, and the cells are rapidly depleting, dividing, and renewing. His lifespan is plummeting. Anahiro had long known what would happen from Tiehuo. So he gritted his teeth. Even if his teeth were clattering, he still insisted on running the secret technique. This extreme pain, just like when love is rampaging, negative emotions begin to affect the yin-dun chakra and cause slight changes. Similarly, the weakening of body cells naturally includes special organs in the body. In the process of continuous replacement, it is constantly affected by the yin-dun chakra, and it seems to have undergone directional mutations. Every cell iteration will further mutate. This is something Ishihara did not notice in his last observation. Woo! The continuous accumulation of pain made Anahiro's face pale and his whole face twitched. Even his body began to change. Those iterated skin, muscle, bone and other tissue cells have shown signs of aging. The surface reflection is that Anahiro has aged, his skin has become loose, and his hair has become gray. He is like an old man with a gloomy look. Seeing this scene, the second elder of Uchiha was shocked and froze in place, and his whole body shuddered violently. Anahiro, a young man, has suddenly become an old man. If it were him, he would probably be dead now. At this time, outside the yard, the third-generation Hokage was still worried about the transaction just now, but suddenly his expression froze. Wait a minute, it was Uchiha who went into trade just now. His pupils shrank suddenly, and his face became extremely ugly in an instant. He stared at the yard and panted, wishing he could rush in immediately. He actually forgot that the purpose of the Uchiha clan's transaction with Ishihara was to open the Mangekyo. He was so anxious just now that he forgot this. It's too late to regret now. He was worried about a conflict with Ishihara and a direct war with Uchiha, and he was still hesitant for a while. However, in the yard, this evolution is almost over. Anahiro has become older than the second elder of Uchiha. The second elder of Uchiha was stunned. Ishihara stared at the situation in Anahiro's body intently. The mutation speed of the mutated organ was faster than he thought. I am afraid that Anahiro's talent is even better than Iron Fire. It's almost there. It's about to mutate. A new Mangekyo is about to be born. Suddenly, all the accumulations reached the critical point. Then the critical point was broken. Buzz. The special organ mutated. A special chakra was born and instantly poured into Uchiha Anahiro's eyes. The 3 Magatama Sharingan appeared automatically, and then the structure changed under the influence of this special chakra. A new pattern was formed. Mangekyo Sharingan. The second elder of Uchiha looked at this scene excitedly, and his whole body was shaking. It was actually true. The Mangekyo Sharingan was really opened. Miracle! Miracle! Fugaku was also a little excited when he saw this scene. Tiehuo's Mangekyo was dug away by Ishihara as soon as it was opened. Now the Uchiha clan can be said to have a pair of new Mangekyo. I opened the Mangekyo Sharingan. Uchiha Inahiro shed tears excitedly. After paying the price of several decades of life, he finally reached the pinnacle of Uchiha. It's all worth it. Ishihara was also very satisfied with his masterpiece and asked, "What is your eye technique?" Uchiha Inahiro was suddenly shocked. This sentence reminded him of Tiehuo's miserable ending last time, and he hurriedly sensed his eye technique. Soon, a stream of information flooded into his mind, and a strange color flashed in his eyes. Ishihara was stunned. Could it be that the Uchiha people only remember to eat and not to be beaten? But at this moment, Inahiro hesitated and said, "My eye technique is called Phantom, which can control the enemy's shadow." Pa! Ishihara patted his forehead and sighed. Well, this experiment failed again. What the hell? Fugaku's mouth twitched, and he looked at Ishihara with a bit of resentment. Before, Tiehuo was affected by Ishihara, and his pupil technique was lightning escape. Now Daohuo was affected again, and his pupil technique was related to shadow. He regretted it a little. If he had known, he should not have let them watch Ishihara perform secret techniques or ninjutsu. Next time, he must not let them see it. No matter how much Fugaku regretted it in his heart, the Uchiha clan had a new pair of Mangekyo Sharingan, which was enough to make him excited. Similarly, even though Ishihara was a little disappointed, he did not miss the opportunity to study Inahori's Mangekyo eye technique. After all, each eye technique is a unique ability, which may give him different inspirations. According to the content of the transaction, it's my turn to study your Mangekyo eye technique next. Ishihara looked at Inahiro calmly, wanting to see his reaction. Inahiro looked a little struggling. Fugaku next to him had a calm face, but his eyes were full of anger. The second elder of Uchiha showed his anger directly on his face. If Fugaku hadn't winked, he might have been unable to hold back. But no matter what they thought in their hearts, they didn't dare to refuse at this moment. Inahiro sighed, feeling a little powerless. Thinking of Ishihara's terribleness and the shadow that covered the sky just now, he had already accepted his fate, but asked with some worry. "Mr. Ishihara, there should be no need to dig out my Sharingan, right?" "No, as long as you cooperate with me." Ishihara glanced at him and said lightly. "Just accept your fate, so you don't have to do it yourself." Inahiro breathed a sigh of relief, and came to Ishihara with some relief, comforting himself in his heart. "Although it is humiliating, it is better than having your Mangekyo dug out like Tiehuo." Ishihara put his hand directly on his head and cast the life chain. Buzz! His chakra entered Inahiro's body with great dominance. Inahiro, who was not prepared at all, felt the chakra in his body and felt very frustrated. Too rude. They didn't treat him as a human being. It was as if they were using him as an experimental material. Fugaku, who was standing next to him, clenched his fists and roared angrily in his heart when he saw this scene. After solving the Konoha high level, I will definitely rescue the clan from Ishihara's hands. Ishihara didn't know what he was thinking, and he wouldn't care if he knew. At this moment, he began to study Inahiro's Mangekyo with all his heart. "Now open the Mangekyo Sharingan and use your eye technique." "Yes." Inahiro hurriedly did as he was told. Ishihara quickly began to analyze Inahiro's Mangekyo eye technique. "You observed and analyzed the phantom of the Mangekyo pupil technique, you had an epiphany, and you developed the secret technique Phantom Training Method." Phantom Training Method. After mastering it, you can control the shadow through visual focus, control the enemy's body through the shadow, and manipulate the shadow to carry out various attacks. A large amount of information poured into his mind, and a flash of surprise flashed in Ishihara's eyes. Sure enough, there is no simple Mangekyo pupil technique. What Inahiro said before was not correct. His pupil technique is not to control the enemy's shadow, but to control the body by controlling the enemy's shadow. But this is not entirely correct, because he can control not only the shadow of a person, but any shadow. If his chakra is enough, he can control the shadow of a mountain or a forest. And he can also launch attacks through the shadow, which is much more flexible than the secret technique of the Nara clan. It can even be said that this pupil technique is an upgraded version of the secret technique of the Nara clan. Ishihara's eyes flickered slightly, and he couldn't help but pay more attention to the Mangekyo Sharingan. And Inahiro also understood the ability of his pupil technique during Ishihara's research, and was immediately excited. So this is the true power of my pupil technique. Thinking of the secret technique that the Nara clan has passed down for hundreds of years. Inahori couldn't help showing a proud look on his face. So what if it's a family secret technique? It's meaningless in front of the kaleidoscope. He got it easily. And it's even stronger. Just then, Ishihara suddenly said, "Continue to practice the kaleidoscope." Inahori's smile froze, and he laughed dryly. "I have already opened the kaleidoscope, is it unnecessary? It takes life to run the secret technique." He has already felt the aging of his body, which is weaker than his peak period. This feeling makes him extremely panic and extremely resistant. Ishihara said in an unquestionable tone. "Now, run the kaleidoscope practice method and open the pupil technique of your other eye." Inahori's face was full of anger, and he kept roaring in his heart. "Don't you see what I look like? If I continue to perform, I will die of old age. Isn't my life a life? If he continues to perform the secret technique, he might die." When he thought of this result, Inahiro's face became extremely ferocious. Ishihara's palm gently pressed on his head. "Are you deaf? I don't want to repeat it again." It was obviously a calm tone, and the palm on his head did not use much strength. But it was like a basin of cold water poured down, and the anger in his heart completely dissipated. "Resist. Looking for death." Inahiro's face was pale, and the ferocity on his face gradually turned into a bitter smile. Fugaku and the second elder next to him looked at this scene with great pain in their hearts. Fugaku opened his mouth and was about to speak. Inahiro shook his head at him. At this time, he understood the feelings of Fugaku and Tiehuo before. In order to keep his own Mangekyo, and for the family to continue trading and open more Mangekyo, he must hold it in. The sacrifices of the clan leader Fugaku and Tiehuo cannot be wasted. "Okay." Inahuo gritted his teeth and spat out a word, then silently began to operate the secret technique. This time, his physical condition began to age visibly. Even wrinkles appeared on his face. Fugaku trembled all over, clenched his fists tightly, and wanted to rush over immediately. But he knew he couldn't. This is the price he was destined to pay when he chose this path. Ishihara naturally saw the change in their expressions, but he didn't care. Instead, he focused on the new eye technique. Buzz. Suddenly, Daohuo stopped the secret technique, a look of joy appeared on his face, and he cried with joy. Success. He didn't die. He opened the second eye technique after only consuming a few years of his life. Ishihara was not surprised. After all, it was natural for him to open the second kaleidoscope eye technique after the first one. On the contrary, he was a little surprised that he consumed so much life. But his attention was soon attracted by the new eye technique. Genshin. This is the name of Inahiro's second eye technique. It is also a control-type eye technique, but this eye technique is an illusion. It is an illusion similar to Koto Amatsukami, which can change other people's will and thoughts. A gleam of light flashed in Ishihara's eyes, and then he felt a little regretful. Because Genshin cannot force others to change their will and thoughts, or it is extremely difficult to force changes. Instead, you have to plant a seed and then slowly guide it. It's a bit like Izanami, you need to take advantage of the situation to achieve the effect. And this change is not permanent, it has a certain time limit. It's like a weakened version of Izanami and Koto Amatsukami. But Inahiro was extremely excited. In his opinion, this illusion is very strong, not to mention that the eye technique itself has the ability of illusion, which can play a huge role in battle. Then Ishihara asked Inahiro to use the eye technique to start analyzing. You observed and analyzed the Mangekyo eye technique, you had an epiphany, and you created the illusion heart cultivation method. Illusion heart cultivation method. After mastering it, you can change other people's thoughts through illusion guidance. Maybe it's time to study Koto Amatsukami. Ishihara's mind turned, and his face calmly said, "Okay, the research is over, you can leave after the seal is applied." The Uchiha clan's sealing technique is different from that of other people in Konoha. He will control your life and death. So it needs to be sealed separately. Inahori, who was still excited, suddenly felt cold in his heart. No matter how strong he is, he still has to become Ishihara's puppet. He was extremely angry in his heart, but he didn't dare to show it. Fugaku and the second head of the Uchiha clan could only watch him apply the sealing technique silently. Then the three of them left the yard with extremely depressed moods and ugly faces. As soon as they walked out of the yard, they saw the third Hokage standing at the door with a solemn expression and stopped them. Fugaku was already feeling aggrieved, and when he was stopped, he immediately exploded, "Get out of the way." The third Hokage looked tense, not looking at them, but his words were extremely tough. "I want to know what deal your Uchiha clan made with Ishihara. If the Uchiha clan really made a deal with Ishihara to open the Mangekyo as Itachi said, then there will be a big trouble. This is the secret of the Uchiha clan, no comment," Fugaku said with a cold face and was about to move forward. The third Hokage stopped him again in an extremely tough manner. "If you don't explain clearly, you can't leave today." He was ready to start a war. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. The people from other families looked at each other, but had no intention of getting involved. Perhaps for civilian ninjas, Uchiha is just the first wealthy family of Konoha and the police force of Konoha. But for these ninja families, Uchiha was also one of the founders of Konoha and was the one who provided them with peace during the Warring States period. In addition to the strength of the Uchiha clan, they didn't want to get involved in the civil war between the Uchiha and the Konoha high-level officials. At this time, Uchiha Inahiro, who had been frustrated for a long time, stepped forward angrily. Fugaku's face changed slightly, and it was too late to stop him. Inahiro said angrily, "Third generation Hokage, do you want to go to war with Uchiha?" Hiss. The patriarchs of the major families who saw this scene took a breath of cold air. Saying this in front of so many people means that they have completely torn their faces. The civil war between the Uchiha and Konoha high-level officials is inevitable. What shocked them even more was Mangekyo Sharingan. Uchiha Inahiro actually opened the Mangekyo Sharingan, and it appeared without any signs. Hyuga Hiyashi's expression was extremely complicated. The Hyuga family and the Uchiha family are both the two great families in Konoha. But when the Uchiha family had the Mangekyo, it meant that the Uchiha family had surpassed the Hyuga family by one level. This made him feel urgent again. The same was true for other families. They looked at Uchiha Fugaku and others with great fear. At the same time, he looked at Ishihara's yard obscurely. Could Ishihara help the Uchiha family open the Mangekyo? Although it was a little unbelievable, it seemed acceptable to think of the secret technique created by Ishihara. For a while, they were more looking forward to cooperating with Ishihara. Inahori looked at these eyes with a proud look. He liked this feeling. This was the treatment that the Uchiha family should enjoy. Being feared, instead of being coveted. The face of the third Hokage was as gloomy as water. He knew that the worst situation had occurred. The Uchiha family really opened the Mangekyo Sharingan through Ishihara. He looked at Inahiro with fear, stared at Fugaku and asked, "It was Ishihara who helped you open the Mangekyo Sharingan. What's the price?" He didn't believe that Ishihara would help Uchiha for free. And the price would probably not be small. He looked at the old Inahiro with a thoughtful look. Fugaku and others looked gloomy. "This has nothing to do with you. Let's go." Fugaku left with the proud Inahiro and the second elder. He was not ready to go to war with the Konoha high-level officials. The clan could open more Mangekyo Sharingan. This time, the third Hokage did not stop him. He was also not ready. But, next, we should prepare to go to war with Uchiha. The third Hokage felt very heavy in his heart. Fugaku and others walked forward. Along the way, the clan leaders of the major families gave way and formed a passage. Fugaku walked over, looking at their awe-filled eyes, proud in his heart. Sure enough, only strength can revive the glory of Uchiha. This further strengthened his idea. At this time, the voice of Shiuan came from the yard. "Let's stop here today, and continue tomorrow." After developing so many secret techniques at once, Shiuan would be tired, not to mention that he also needs time to digest it. The people of other families were a little disappointed when they heard it. The third Hokage's face changed slightly, and then he left in a hurry, and the others followed him. The group quickly returned to the Uchiha clan, and the elders and others had been waiting for them at Fugaku's house. After seeing them, the elders and others stood up and looked at them expectantly. How is the situation? The somewhat old-looking Tiehuo was still immersed in the excitement that the patriarchs of the major families avoided him just now, and the third Hokage did not dare to stop him, and said excitedly. We succeeded. I have opened the Mangekyo Sharingan. Boom. The elders and others cheered excitedly. The strength of the Uchiha clan has increased again. Fugaku was also very excited when he saw his clan members. The situation just now made him feel unsatisfied. It would be great if those people could always respect the Uchiha clan. But he was a rational person and soon calmed down. After a conflict with the third Hokage, Fugaku knew that the war between the Uchiha clan and the Konoha high-level officials was about to begin. And it was different from what they planned. This war was almost exposed, and no one knew how it would develop, or who would participate. But thinking of the upcoming war and the rich results that the Uchiha clan might achieve, Fugaku was a little excited in his heavy mood. After he told everyone about today's intelligence and worries, everyone started to discuss excitedly. The great elder was the calmest and most rational. Remember, this is us and the Konoha high-level officials, no. This is a war between us and the Sarutobi clan, the Shimura clan, the Utaha clan, the Mito clan, the four major families. He directly defined this war thoroughly. It was not a rebellion, but a civil war in Konoha. Fugaku immediately understood what he meant and nodded in agreement. The fighting power shown by Might Guy today is too scary. Who would have thought that he, who is usually just a Jonin, would actually open the 7th gate of the 8 gates of ninjutsu? As members of the Uchiha clan, they naturally know how terrifying the fighting power is after the 7th gate of the 8 gates of ninjutsu is opened. Once they confront each other, the Uchiha clan will definitely suffer considerable damage. There is no benefit to the Uchiha clan. Fugaku also completely woke up and said in a deep voice, I will negotiate with the patriarchs of the major families. The elder nodded. Although he did not agree with the Uchiha rebellion, the arrow was on the string and had to be shot. In the final analysis, they are still worried about the lack of fighting power of the Uchiha. After all, even in the Uchiha clan, there are not many real elite ninjas. And the strength of the third Hokage and Danzo is not weak, they are not simple people. They need to do their best in this war. The elder stood up, looked around and said in a deep voice. More people in the clan need to stand up. Tomorrow, everyone who has opened the 3 Magatama should try to open the Mangekyo. Hearing this, Daohuo's face changed drastically and he retorted. I object. He looked at the elder who looked uneasy and said in a deep voice. Elder, the side effects of the secret technique are too great. I feel that I can only live for more than 10 years. If everyone in the clan who has opened the 3 Magatama tries it, our Uchiha clan will be in a situation of lack of successors in a few years. Tiehuo also objected loudly. The great elder fell silent upon hearing this, and sighed. But have you ever thought about what the fate of our Uchiha clan will be if this war fails? Even if the clan is not extinct, I'm afraid is almost the same. Compared with that result, the current loss is nothing. Anahiro gritted his teeth and growled, I can continue to perform the secret technique and open Susanoo. No, you will die if you perform the secret technique again. Fugaku's face changed drastically and he hurriedly stopped him. You can't let all the elites in the clan use the secret technique. I will replace the extra combat power. Don't stop me, clan leader. Anahiro was firm in his attitude. Fugaku and the great elders and others could only agree upon hearing this, and only selected some of the 3 Magatama openers to use the secret technique. This time, Anahiro, who had just opened the Mangekyo Sharingan, hypnotized them. They still did not give up on getting rid of Ishihara's control and wanted to break the seal in their minds. Throughout the meeting, Itachi remained silent, with a very complicated mood. As the new Mangekyo appeared, he knew that his strength could no longer influence the war. He was also a little confused. What should he do? Itachi came to the outside of Ishihara's courtyard with doubts. In the yard, Ishihara was sorting out his gains today. Illusion, Lightning Release, Taijutsu, Shadow Control Technique, Mangekyo Sharingan. Among the 5 consecutive secret techniques, Illusion, Shadow Control and Mangekyo Pupil Technique Illusion Heart are all techniques he can master immediately. He still needs to practice the 3 skills of Thunder Release, 8 Gates of Physical Arts, and Phantom. However, the biggest gain today is the research on yin release in shadow imitation technique. This makes Ishihara feel very good. Mr. Ishihara, can I come in? Suddenly, a voice sounded outside the door, and there was also the sound of Anbu blocking the quarrel. Ishihara frowned, then raised his eyebrows, and the person outside the door seemed to be Itachi. He actually came to the door. Ishihara was a little surprised, and then asked Itachi to come in. After coming in, Itachi looked obviously a little nervous. After all, he is only 11 years old now. You actually dare to come to see me, it's really surprising. Ishihara looked at him with a smile. He has always been interested in Itachi. In the original work, Itachi is the murderer who destroyed the family and killed his parents. No matter what the reason is, this is unforgivable. For peace, to protect his younger brother, so he wants to kill his parents. He was very curious about what kind of weird brain circuit allowed Itachi to make such a decision. Itachi stood there nervously, having opened the 3 Magatama Sharingan, and said solemnly, I want to ask you something. Ishihara pointed to the seat opposite, sit down and talk. After Itachi sat down, he picked up the teacup on the table and poured tea for Ishihara. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, what do you think the meaning of life is? Ishihara was stunned, not expecting to ask such a philosophical question right away. But after thinking about it, he still answered the question, for me, the meaning of life is to live. That's why he pursues immortality. As for enjoyment, he will naturally enjoy it. But for now, he pays more attention to the method of immortality. Alive, Itachi nodded thoughtfully. He was taken to the battlefield by Fugaku when he was 4 years old, and he saw the cruelty and bloodshed of the battlefield. That's why he has been trying his best to avoid the coming of war. This is also the meaning of his life. Especially after turning on the Manjikoscope, his powerful strength gave him the illusion that he should resolve the conflict between Uchiha and Konoha and avoid a possible ninja war. But now, it seems he can't do it. Itachi asked confusedly. Then what should I do to prevent the war between Uchiha and Konoha from breaking out? Ishihara immediately laughed. Is this question difficult? Isn't it difficult? Itachi looked puzzled. Then let me ask you a question first. Ishihara looked at him with a half-smile. In this war between Uchiha and Konoha's top brass, if you are asked to join the camp of Konoha's top brass, do you think you have a chance to win? You can use any means, any strategy, no matter the cost. After thinking for a moment, Itachi looked hesitant. Ishihara smiled and said it for him. You can betray the Uchiha clan, you can even kill Fugaku in a sneak attack at home, and then falsely convey Fugaku's order to attract Inari who has just opened the kaleidoscope, and then kill Inari. The 2 kaleidoscopes are gone. If you join forces with the 3rd Hokage and Danzo, you can completely destroy the Uchiha clan. Is that what you think? Itachi hesitated and nodded. Ishihara suppressed his smile and said coldly, but have you forgotten that Uchiha is my property now? Itachi's pupils shrank suddenly and he looked at Ishihara in horror. Are you going to interfere in this matter? Ishihara raised a finger and shook it, and said indifferently and domineeringly. It's not that I want to interfere, but Uchiha is my thing. It is still useful to me. If I don't let Uchiha be exterminated, then it will be impossible for it to exterminate the clan, even if the opponent is the entire Konoha. Itachi was shocked, and his heart sank to the bottom when he looked at his confident eyes. He knew very well that a calm and rational person like Ishihara would not be blindly confident. Now that he has said this, he has the strength to fight against the entire Konoha. Could it be said that he has reached the legendary strength of Uchiha Madara and the 1st Hokage? Or that he has mastered the wood release? Itachi was horrified by the sudden thought that came to his mind. But looking at Ishihara's half-smiling eyes, it seemed to be telling him. Yes, you guessed it right. Itachi's heart felt cold. Even if it wasn't Mu-dun, he probably developed a secret technique of similar level. He knew that Konoha's top brass had no chance. Once something happens to the 3rd Hokage, Danzo and others, Konoha will inevitably fall into turmoil, and it is likely to trigger a new ninja war. Thinking of this, Itachi felt a chill in his heart. At this time, Ishihara continued to ask, what if you stand in the Uchiha camp? Itachi's face changed slightly when he heard this, and he continued. 3 pairs of Mangekyo Sharingan, No matter whether they attack Danzo or Lord Hokage, there is no possibility of failure. He glanced at Ishihara. The most important thing is that Uchiha is standing behind him. Ishihara said calmly. If I am not wrong, Fugaku will bring more people to open the kaleidoscope tomorrow. By then, Uchiha will not have 3 pairs of kaleidoscopes, but 4 pairs, 5 pairs, or even more. Gudong. Itachi couldn't help but swallowed, with a look of horror on his face. With 5 pairs or even more kaleidoscopes, he could not imagine the possibility of the Uchiha clan being defeated. Itachi continued to imagine, and his expression suddenly changed. However, if the 3rd Hokage dies, Konoha will fall into civil strife, triggering a war in the ninja world, and there will be countless casualties. Ishihara sneered. Does this have anything to do with you? When the 3rd Hokage dies, a new Hokage will naturally be born. If the ninja war doesn't break out now, it will break out in the future. You don't think that opening the Mangekyo Sharingan will change the situation in the ninja world, do you? Itachi suddenly fell silent. He did think so before, at least the war caused by Konoha and Uchiha could be eliminated. But looking at Ishihara, he felt weak. It was clear that the man in front of him had the ability to stop everything, but he had no intention of taking action. Thinking of how busy and anxious the Uchiha clan, the 3rd Hokage and others are today, he suddenly felt a little ridiculous. The outcome has already been decided. So Itachi, now it's your turn to make a choice. Should you choose Uchiha or the 3rd Hokage? Ishihara narrowed his eyes and looked at him. He wanted to see if Itachi's brain circuit would be so weird that he would be surprised. Itachi smiled bitterly. Do I have any choice? Choosing the 3rd Hokage means choosing to die with him, and war is still inevitable. But choosing Uchiha, at least you can survive, and then consider avoiding war. I choose Uchiha. It seems that there is nothing wrong with your brain. Ishihara shook his head. Itachi was a little confused. Is there something wrong with his brain in Ishihara's eyes? I have solved your problem for you, and now it's your turn to pay the price. Ishihara looked at him and said. Itachi was shocked all over. His face was tense, and his palm holding the teacup was a little pale. Does this also have a price? Of course, Ishihara said as a matter of course. Itachi asked nervously. What price do I have to pay? Everything about you, Ishihara said calmly. Itachi's face changed drastically, revealing a look of horror. He suddenly stood up and looked at him warily. Ishihara looked at him calmly and took a sip of tea. Since you dare to come to me, you must be prepared. I will not show mercy this time. You can use any method, as long as you can escape, then I will let you go. The words have not yet finished. Itachi had already taken action. Mangekyo Sharingan, Tsukuyomi, decisive enough. Ishihara was filled with admiration in his heart. If nothing else, Itachi's combat IQ is indeed not comparable to that of ordinary ninjas. He knew that other moves had no chance of winning, so he used the strongest move right from the start. Buzz. The moment the two looked at each other, Ishihara found that he had entered the dark and bloody Tsukuyomi space. He has been tied to the cross. Looking at the bright red sky, the dim moon, and the blood flowing around him, Ishihara was extremely calm. The kaleidoscope eye technique is good, but it's useless to me. Ishihara's illusion space is too strong. Not only is it blessed by crystal contemplation, but it also has the yin escape chakra, which has made great progress in recent research. There is no one alive in the ninja world whose genjutsu is stronger than his. Not even Itachi with the kaleidoscope turned on. Itachi stared at Ishihara with a solemn expression, ready for action. He didn't think Tsukuyomi could defeat Ishihara. But what he needs is to use reading to buy a moment of time, put Ishihara into a trance, and give him a chance to take action. And he knew Ishihara's terrifying talent very well, so he had no intention of speaking at all. I don't want to reveal any information about my eye skills. The moment he appeared in Tsukuyomi space, he immediately launched an attack. A large number of Itachi figures appeared in the Tsukuyomi space, holding long swords and stabbing Ishihara without saying a word. Illusion space. Brush. The surrounding scene suddenly changed, turning into a pure white space, with only bits and pieces of blood remaining. The cross was gone, and Ishihara stood calmly on the pure white ground. Itachi's expression changed drastically and he looked at him in horror. You used your own illusion to cover my illusion. Ishihara smiled lightly. Yes, if you have no other means, then lose here. Click. Itachi bit his lip. The severe pain accompanied by the consumption of Kaleidoscope's eye power allowed him to break free from the shackles of the illusion space. Disappeared in place. As expected of an illusion-type kaleidoscope, the illusion resistance is indeed high enough. Ishihara was a little surprised, but he didn't hold anything back. The power of the illusion space has reached its maximum, although it has not activated other illusion abilities. But Itachi was able to break free, which was enough to surprise him. Ishihara immediately lifted the illusion. In the real world, Ishihara looked at Itachi opposite, and his pupils suddenly shrank. Flap. A dark crow appeared, right behind Itachi. One of its eyes looks towards Ishihara. Is that Shisui's kaleidoscope? Ishihara was shocked. Itachi shouted in his mouth, "It's over. Other gods." Buzz. The other gods, who had been prepared for a long time, immediately launched their attack. The kaleidoscope in the crow's eyes began to spin wildly. Oh, Ishihara suddenly laughed. Not only did he not resist, but he also opened his white eyes to observe the crow. What's going on? Itachi had an ominous feeling. From the moment he planned to find Ishihara, he was ready to fight. Tsukuyomi is not his trump card. No one else is. But now, Itachi looked at the motionless Ishihara with a confused expression on his face. Did the other gods work? He took a deep breath and said, "Ishihara." Ishihara did not respond and stood there with a thoughtful look on his face. No, did another god fail? How is this possible? Itachi's expression changed, and he was shocked. He knows the power of other gods, which even the Mangekyo Sharingan cannot resist. Through the previous fight, he had already judged that although Ishihara's illusion ability was stronger than his kaleidoscope, it was still at the same level. You should be unable to resist other gods. But reality slapped him hard. Itachi ignored the doubts and shock in his heart and hurriedly retreated to escape. But, where are you going? Before he could take action, his shoulders sank. Ishihara was already standing beside him, holding his shoulder with one hand. What a speed! Itachi felt a chill in his heart and wanted to continue struggling. But, brush! A large number of spells spread from Ishihara's palm to his body, and Itachi's body suddenly froze and could no longer move. It's a technique. Itachi's heart sank to the bottom. He knew that he was defeated without any backhand. But he couldn't figure it out. Didn't you win the favor of another god? He did not ask Ishihara how he knew that other gods were in his hands, because he knew that he would not get the answer. Ishihara stood next to him and said as if he was distracted, "No, I did fall into your trap." Then why didn't the other gods play a role? Itachi became even more confused. Obviously Shi Yuan should not be able to stop other gods, and he should also be attacked, but why is this the result? Ishihara immediately laughed when he heard this. Because what's here is not his true body, but his wood escape clone. The wood release clone is very special, even the Byakugan and the Mangekyo Sharingan cannot see through it. Coupled with the strong combat power shown by Ishihara, no one has ever doubted whether this is his true form. Ishihara knew that there were other gods and Metkai in Konoha, so of course he would not let his body take risks. At this time, the main body is practicing in Mist Ninja Village. Itachi was astute and thought through the possibility of other gods' failure in his mind. He quickly got the answer and said in horror, "This is not your true body." After much deliberation, he only thought of this possibility before he came up with the situation just now. Seeing Ishihara nodding, Itachi's heart sank. Thinking about the combat prowess Ishihara had shown before, he was even more shocked. Defeated Fugaku who turned on Susanoo, defeated the Iron Fire who turned on Kaleidoscope, and shattered mountains with one punch. Such terrifying combat power is not even Ishihara's true form. How strong should his body be? It's unimaginable. Itachi's heart was completely confused. He knew that he had failed and no longer had any luck, but he asked unwillingly. Diaresis, but even if you have a special status, you should be affected by illusions. Clones such as shadow clones are made of chakra. The ability of genjutsu is to disrupt the flow of chakra. Although the pupil technique is different, it also has this effect. The interference to chakra caused by an illusion of this level is enough to cause the shadow clone to dissipate. But not only did Ishihara's clone not dissipate, it didn't even become a god. Other gods are very special, but they lose because of their specialness. Ishihara said meaningfully. Originally, he planned to discard the Mudden clone if it was hit by another god, and send another clone over. But he underestimated the effect of crystal contemplation. The moment he received an attack from another god, the spiritual energy or soul in his body automatically formed a crystal, protecting him like a shield. The ability of other gods to rewrite their will is simply blocked. In the final analysis, the illusion ability of other gods to interfere with chakra is only at the kaleidoscope level. Ishihara blocked it easily. That's why he said that other gods were defeated by its specialness. Looking at Itachi, who was still thinking hard, Ishihara smiled and said, "Don't think too much, this is my secret technique, you can't figure it out even if you want to break your scalp." Itachi immediately smiled bitterly upon hearing this. He didn't expect that Ishihara would be so terrifying that he could develop a secret technique that could resist other gods. It is indeed a monster. Since you failed to escape, from now on, everything you have is mine. Come on, Ishihara said calmly. Itachi's face changed wildly. But he couldn't even move his body and couldn't resist Ishihara's seal. Sealing technique, Ishihara shouted, and instantly placed a new seal on Itachi's body. Itachi sighed, looking resigned to his fate. But Ishihara understood that Itachi would not accept his fate and would definitely think of countermeasures. He smiled and said, "This seal refers to some of the settings of the caged bird of the Hyuga clan. The sealing technique has some caged bird settings from the beginning of its design. Orochimaru once studied caged birds, but unfortunately he had no results and was abandoned. But this special seal and research information were all learned by Ishihara. When designing the sealing technique, he joined it. In the current version, he has strengthened this effect again and added the function of controlling the body." Itachi's face changed wildly, and his body was trembling slightly. Ishihara smiled when he saw this. "Yes, even if you die, you are still under my control." Itachi's whole body went limp, and he no longer had the intention to resist. Ishihara came into contact with the technique on Itachi, freeing him, and returned to his seat to sit down again. Itachi knelt down on one knee. "Itachi, see Mr. Ishihara." Ishihara immediately laughed. "Get up. Yes. I will take care of other gods for the time being." Ishihara took action to dig out the other gods in the crow's eyes and put them away. Although he could control Itachi's life and death, Itachi had too many things on his mind and might cause trouble if left in his hands. Itachi returned to his expressionless look, lowered his head and said, "Lord Ishihara, can you also give me the method to activate the Mangekyo Sharingan?" Ishihara glanced at him and saw what he was thinking. "Do you want to activate the second eye technique in Susanoo?" "Yes, I still hope that the war that may be caused by the battle between Uchiha and Konoha's top brass can be eliminated." Itachi spoke his inner thoughts, and his attitude was very firm. He was a smart man. Since he could not change the reality that he was controlled, the only thing he could think of was to continue to improve his strength. As long as his strength was strong enough, he could naturally stop the war. "Okay," Ishihara agreed. "I want to know if the lifespan consumed by his secret technique is related to his talent." In the original work, Itachi opened the Mangekyo and awakened the Tsukuyomi on the day Shisui died. But the second eye technique Amaterasu was opened after joining the Akatsuki organization, with a time interval of about 2 years. So now, Ishihara showed an expectant look and began to orally narrate the Mangekyo training method. After listening to this, Itachi frowned and was somewhat shocked. Although he did not know the fundamental principle of the Mangekyo training method, he could see something from it. Just the little he saw made him feel extremely obscure and difficult to understand. He could not imagine that as a foreigner, Ishihara had studied the Sharingan to what extent. Then Itachi began to operate the secret technique. Ishihara opened his Byakugan to observe the situation in Itachi's body. The moment the secret technique was operated, it began to madly extract the vitality in Itachi's body. The cells were aging rapidly. Ishihara, who had many experiences, could roughly estimate how much vitality was consumed in the process of performing the secret technique. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Soon the lifespan consumed by the secret technique exceeded the time Itachi needed to open his eyes. Ishihara frowned. Sure enough, taking shortcuts comes at a price. After consuming 4 years of life, Itachi's second eye technique finally opened. Amaterasu. Even after opening the second eye technique, Itachi still had that expressionless look. But looking at his fluctuating breathing, it was obvious that he was also very excited. Your eye technique is the same as Fugaku's. Could it be that the Mangekyo can be inherited? Ishihara said with a smile, but he had no intention of studying it in depth. Perhaps the Mangekyo has a genetic influence, but the ability of the eye technique is more affected by the thoughts in the mind when the eyes are opened. Itachi glanced at him and said nothing. But he remembered in his heart that one of Fugaku's eye techniques is Amaterasu. Can't Amaterasu deal with him? Itachi sighed in his heart. He was still amazed at the power of Amaterasu when he just got the information about Amaterasu, but he didn't expect Ishihara to pour cold water on him. But fortunately, he has gotten used to it. Then Ishihara studied Itachi's eye technique Tsukuyomi. And Itachi also accepted his fate and let Ishihara perform it. You analyzed the Mangekyo eye technique Tsukuyomi, you had an epiphany, and you developed the secret technique Tsukuyomi training method. Tsukuyomi training method. After mastering it, you can perform the illusion Tsukuyomi. After digesting the information in his mind, Ishihara fell into thought. The speed of analyzing the Mangekyo eye technique is getting faster and faster. If this continues, maybe I can analyze the Mangekyo eye technique without touching it in the future. Ishihara was not sure, but if that's the case, maybe analyzing Obito's Kamui in the future will be easy. The Tsukuyomi training method is not difficult for Ishihara, and it is even very simple. Almost at the moment of appearance, he completely mastered Tsukuyomi. Then he immediately took out Shisui's Mangekyo that he had just obtained for analysis. You analyzed the Mangekyo eye technique Koto Amatsukami, you had an epiphany, and you developed the secret technique Koto Amatsukami training method. Koto Amatsukami training method. After mastering it, you can use Koto Amatsukami to change other people's will and thoughts silently, but it consumes a lot of energy. Although Shisui's Mangekyo has been closed, Ishihara has personally felt the power of Koto Amatsukami once. After penetrating the subtle differences in the structure of the Mangekyo, the analysis was completed. What surprised Ishihara was that his Koto Amatsukami secret technique was actually related to the crystal visualization method. Although it also uses chakra, it can also be activated using mental power. What surprised him even more was that he found that he learned Koto Amatsukami faster than Tsukuyomi. It was like a fish in water, extremely easy. Ishihara took a deep breath. My illusions are getting stronger and stronger. I'm afraid that no one in the ninja world can be my opponent just in illusions. Thinking of the ability of his illusion space, he couldn't help but be a little surprised. This secret technique exceeded his expectations. Unknowingly, it has become so powerful. He couldn't think of anyone in the ninja world who could block his illusions. It was terrifying. At this time, Itachi whispered, "Lord Ishihara, what do you need me to do after I go back?" Ishihara came back to his senses and joked. "I don't have any tasks for you for the time being, you just need to remember one thing. You are Uchiha." Yes, Itachi nodded silently. He had no choice. Then, Itachi said goodbye and left. Ishihara smiled at his back. He also wanted to see what the fate of Uchiha would become. At this time, the third Hokage and Danzo and others were holding a meeting. There is no doubt that the strength shown by Ishihara today has proved his ability in the development of secret techniques. Even metals of the level of 8 gates can be improved. Then other forbidden techniques can probably be improved. The third Hokage was excited and said, "I'm afraid you have also received the news. The Uchiha clan deliberately released the news that they are not going to conflict with Konoha, but with the 4 of us in our family. Do you think other families will get involved? Now we can only rely on ourselves. Today, the Uchiha clan has a pair of Mangekyo Sharingan. No one knows how many people will open their eyes in the future. If we don't strengthen our strength, I'm afraid there will be only one way to go. Whether you agree or not, I will trade with Ishihara tomorrow." The Mangekyo Sharingan put too much pressure on the third Hokage, and he has lost his patience. The forbidden technique belongs to Konoha, but life is your own. Utane Kaharu and Mitomen looked at each other and nodded silently. Danzo glanced at him, then lowered his head, not wanting others to see his greedy eyes at the moment. After knowing Ishihara's feat today, he could no longer hold back. Decided to use Koto Amatsukami on Ishihara. Ishihara, you will be mine soon. Hokage-sama, just got the news that Itachi went to Ishihara's yard and went in. The third Hokage received the news from the Anbu before the meeting was over. He pondered for a moment and said, "Let Itachi come to see me." Itachi, who was on his way home, was stopped by the Anbu. "Uchiha Itachi, Hokage-sama summoned." Itachi frowned slightly. After he revealed the information last time, the third Hokage had already shown his distrust of him. The conflict between the Uchiha and Konoha high-level officials is now almost out in the open. Going to see the third Hokage at this time will definitely have huge risks. Do you want to go? Itachi hesitated. He has made up his mind to stand in the Uchiha camp, maybe he can get some information. At this moment, a voice sounded from behind. Itachi has other things to do. You go back and tell the Hokage that from today on, Itachi is no longer a member of the Anbu. Father, Itachi looked at Fugaku's sudden appearance with some surprise. Chief Fugaku, do you want to disobey Hokage-sama's order? The nerves of several Anbu people became tense instantly, and they stared at Fugaku angrily and asked. Roll. Fugaku opened the kaleidoscope directly and uttered one word. As the saying goes, a gentleman does not stand behind a dangerous wall. How could he let Itachi see the third Hokage now that they had already broken their skin? Today's Uchiha clan is not afraid of anyone. You. The Anbu people were shocked and under great pressure. What frightened them even more was Fugaku's attitude, it was too tough. Fugaku glanced at him coldly, and then said to Itachi, "Let's go home with me." Itachi nodded and followed. The Anbu people looked at each other, not daring to stop them, and hurried back to report to the third Hokage. The third Hokage blew out a puff of smoke and looked solemn. He didn't expect Fugaku's attitude to be so tough. He is completely different from his previous indecisive appearance. I'm afraid Uchiha can no longer hold himself in any longer and must complete the transaction as soon as possible. As for what happened just now, unless he planned to detonate the conflict between Konoha and Uchiha, he could only treat it as nothing happened. On the way home, Fugaku was in a good mood. Itachi, don't be alone with the third Hokage these days. It's too dangerous. Yes, Itachi nodded, rarely resisting. This was completely different from how he would defend the third Hokage before. Fugaku became even happier when he saw this, with a smile on his face, and while greeting pedestrians on the roadside, he whispered. I went to Hinata's house just now, and they have promised not to interfere in our fight with the top management of Konoha. Itachi's face changed slightly. He didn't expect Fugaku to move so quickly and so smoothly. I'm afraid other families don't want to get involved. As long as we stabilize the other families, we will definitely win. After hearing this, Itachi thought for a moment and asked with a solemn expression, where is Metkai? Fugaku's face became serious. There is no doubt that Metkai is now the strongest person in Konoha besides Ishihara. Due to insufficient intelligence, they even suspected that Metkai had opened the 8th gate of the 8 gates of Dunjia. Mastered the 8-gate Dunjia formation. As a family that has been passed down for thousands of years, Fugaku naturally knows how terrifying Metkai is when he activates the 8-gate armor formation. It can be said that one of the biggest problems for the Uchiha clan now is to make Metkai neutral. But whether Metkai has a family or not, he is also a very pure person. It is difficult for such a person to have any weaknesses. He hasn't figured out how to deal with it yet. Fugaku also had a headache. There is no good way yet. Hearing this, Itachi said, let me handle this matter, I will handle it well. Fugaku glanced at him in surprise. Just at this time, the two of them had arrived at the door of the house. Let's talk about it when we go home. Soon, the two came to the secret room at home, which was surrounded by a barrier and confidentiality was guaranteed. Fugaku looked at Itachi and asked solemnly, Itachi, tell me what you are thinking now. He knew very well that his son was smart, mature and stable. But that's exactly what happened, so he always disagreed with Uchiha's rebellion plan and wanted to use other means to eliminate the gap between Uchiha and Konoha's top management. But now, something seems different. Itachi watched Fugaku take a deep breath. Father, have I activated the Mangekyo Sharingan? What? Fugaku's expression changed drastically, but after looking at it carefully, he was a little confused and hesitant. Itachi did seem to have changed a bit, but it was not obvious. He still looked like a young man, full of energy. There is no aging look at all like iron fire and rice fire. Itachi saw through his thoughts and said shockingly, I have already turned on the kaleidoscope. You. Fugaku suddenly stood up in shock, his pupils suddenly shrank and he stared at him, unable to calm down in his heart. Itachi had actually turned on the kaleidoscope a long time ago and had been hiding it from him. This made Fugaku feel a little painful in his heart. This alone is enough to explain Itachi's previous attitude and stance. The son of the Uchiha clan leader. The future leader of Uchiha. He actually had the idea of standing on the opposite side of Uchiha. Absurd. Fugaku was furious, but he gritted his teeth and suppressed it. Because this is his son, a son he is proud of. The past is no longer important, what matters is Itachi's current attitude. Thinking of this, the anger in Fugaku's heart gradually dissipated. Suddenly, his eyes became sharp, he stared at Itachi and asked in a deep voice. Did you kill Shisui? Itachi looked at his expression and saw his anger, helplessness and nervousness, and couldn't help but sigh. Not me. Fugaku heaved a sigh of relief. It was good that it wasn't him. Otherwise, he really didn't know how to face this strange son. Then he was even more confused. How did you open your Mangekyo? At the battlefield of the Third Ninja World War, his friend died in front of him to save him. This pain almost drove him crazy, so he opened the Mangekyo. The price was huge. Itachi couldn't have opened the Sharingan without a price. Itachi pursed his lips, and then told what happened on the night Shisui died. Danzo, I must kill you. Fugaku roared angrily, not only because of Shisui's death. It was also because Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan actually fell into the hands of an outsider. It was simply a shame. Chapter 91. Itachi said solemnly, yes, Danzo must die. He knew very well that compared to the third Hokage, who had become indecisive, Danzo was more decisive and ruthless. And the hostility towards Uchiha is also the greatest and strongest. If Danzo is not killed, he will keep targeting Uchiha. So he must die, and it must be a reasonable death. A cold light flashed in Itachi's eyes. He must use his own methods to minimize the impact of this war. Second. Early the next morning, before dawn, people from various major families were already preparing to head to Ishihara's courtyard. The Uchiha clan, Fugaku and others were busy all night without rest, and Inahuo kept using the kaleidoscope eye technique to plant illusion seeds for others. After communicating with Nara Shikaku last night, the Akamichi clan and the Yamanaka clan have also made the decision to fully trade with Ishihara. But while they were still preparing, someone has already arrived in front of Ishihara's yard. Danzo looked at the inconspicuous courtyard in front of him with extremely fiery eyes. As long as I plant another god for Ishihara later, he will be his puppet. All his secrets will be his own. And Ishihara will also become the tool for him to ascend to the position of Hokage and unify the ninja world. Thinking of this, Danzo couldn't wait to speak. Mr. Ishihara, can I go in? Ishihara, who was still sleeping, was woken up and cursed angrily, get out. 120. Outside the door, Danzo's eyes were full of anger. Asshole, I'll call you Mr. Ishihara to give you face, but if I don't give you face, you're nothing. Bang, he made a seal, then pushed open the door and broke in. Toruni and Feng, who were following behind, looked calm. How dare you disobey Lord Danzo, this kid is doomed. The two then moved the knocked unconscious Anbu to the side and guarded the door on their behalf. Silently waiting for Danzo's triumphant return. After Danzo entered the courtyard, he walked straight towards the bedroom. Squeak. The door opened, and Ishihara walked out of the room with an angry face. He looked at Danzo and said coldly, you broke in without my consent. Do you want to die? Danzo stared at Ishihara greedily, feeling very excited. As long as he controls the man in front of him, his dream can come true. Soon, it'll be ready in no time. Ishihara felt chilled by the look, and said coldly, I don't like the look in your eyes very much. He stepped forward. Danzo's face darkened, and he walked towards Ishihara with an arrogant expression, saying disdainfully, I don't like the way you look at me either. He's just a disciple of that traitor Orochimaru. and he actually dares to show off his power in Konoha. Who do you think you are? You are nothing. And I am the future Hokage of Konoha village. What qualifications do you have to dare to talk to me like this? Ishihara frowned. Why is this guy so crazy about coming here? Perhaps because his ideal was about to be achieved, Danzo became more and more excited as he talked. Do you think I'm seeking death by provoking you? Before Ishihara could answer, Danzo shouted, arrogance. His eyes are full of hatred. You're just like those Uchiha, you're too arrogant. No one is invincible, even the first Hokage has an enemy like Uchiha Madara. Don't think that you are invincible just because people from Konoha praise you for a few words. You're not even close yet. Danzo looked arrogant and stared at Ishihara with contempt. Ishihara touched his nose, looking a little weird. It seemed like this was the first time since he time traveled that he had been ridiculed like this. So am I going to show off and slap you in the face next? Thinking about it, I'm still a little excited. At this time, the distance between the two was only 2 meters, which could be said to be within a stone's throw. Ishihara looked at Danzo expectantly, so what do you want to do? Come on, hurry up and give me a chance to show off. I really want to try it. Danzo looked at him with extremely angry eyes. He hated the feeling of being stared at like this, as if he was a clown. I hope you can keep this look later. I will definitely let you. Danzo said through gritted teeth, but his words suddenly stopped. Ishihara was slightly stunned, and it was during this gap that before Danzo finished speaking, he activated Shisui's Mangekyo. No god. Buzz. Special fluctuations spread. Ishihara made a move. Danzo stared at him with his eyes fixed on him, feeling a little expectant and a little nervous. The words he just said were just to get closer to Ishihara. In fact, how could he underestimate Ishihara? Even in order to ensure that the other gods can be 100% successful, he did not hesitate to risk the danger to get close to Ishihara. It seems now, I succeeded. Huge joy surged into Danzo's heart, making his body tremble with excitement. He seemed to have seen Ishihara's secret technique, and he could learn whatever he wanted. Even if there is no secret technique, as long as you need it, you can order Ishihara to develop it. His strength will improve by leaps and bounds. Even mastering the Sharingan. Master the wood escape. Master the power beyond the first Hokage. Then use this power to become a Hokage. To pacify the ninja world. To unify the ninja world. His regret will be made up. His dream will be realized completely. Ha ha ha, ha ha, ga. Danzo laughed excitedly, but suddenly. His laughter stopped abruptly. The smile on his face froze. Danzo looked at Ishihara, who looked strange in front of him, and had a bad feeling in his heart. You, he pointed at Ishihara, his body trembling a little. You said that if you use other ninjutsu or illusion, I can still cooperate with you. Ishihara spread his hands and said helplessly. But I am already immune to Koto Amatsukami, I can't cooperate with you even if I want to. What? Danzo's face changed wildly, and his heart was horrified. He no longer cared about why Ishihara was immune to Koto Amatsukami. He now had only one thought. Run. Run far away. But the next moment, snap, a hand grabbed his head. Ishihara pressed his head slightly. Asshole, what do you want to do? Danzo fought hard, supporting his body and standing in place, cursing with fire in his eyes. Kneel down, Ishihara shouted coldly, and then exerted force with his palm. Bang! The terrifying force was transmitted from the top of his head to Danzo's body, instantly making his eyes bulge and his face full of blue veins. With a bang, he knelt on the ground. A deep pit was even smashed on the ground. Let me go! Danzo roared angrily. His whole face became extremely hideous, and his eyes stared at Ishihara as if he wanted to kill someone. Just now he was thinking about controlling Ishihara. But now he actually kneeled down to Ishihara. It was a great shame. It made Danzo want to die. 1.1. Don't shout, there is a soundproof barrier in this yard. Ishihara sneered and grabbed Danzo's head and pulled it up hard, and Danzo's face was full of shame and anger. Snap! A slap hit Danzo's face, and he spat out blood. Danzo was stunned, and then he was furious. Asshole, how dare you? Slap! Ishihara slapped him again. Pooh! This time Danzo's teeth popped out, and he roared, I am. Slap! I want to kill. Slap! Slap! One slap after another hit Danzo's face. Danzo's face had become bruised and swollen, stained with blood, and even his eyes became blank. Ishihara frowned and slapped him hard. Crack! Danzo's head turned 360 degrees. Danzo's eyes stared at Ishihara, which was a bit creepy. The next moment, Danzo's body slowly dissipated. But Ishihara was not surprised at all. Because during the conversation between the two just now, Danzo quietly made a seal, and more than once. He calmly looked at the position next to him. There, Danzo reappeared, and was intact. But the moment he appeared, Danzo immediately ran out of the yard. He didn't even bother to express his inner anger. He was extremely frightened in his heart, and his face was full of fear. What kind of monster is this guy? It's okay that the god of the gods is useless, but his illusion made me unable to detect it at all, and it can completely bind my body. I was careless, I shouldn't have come in by myself. Danzo felt a little regretful. If he had known that Ishihara's illusion was so strong, he would definitely bring his subordinates in. Now he is fighting alone. Once he is hit by an illusion, he can't get rid of it at all. He can't even resist. He can't imagine how terrifying Ishihara's illusion is. Even if can cast Izanagi several times, he still doesn't feel safe in his heart. Because in front of Ishihara, he had no ability to resist. He didn't catch up. I can escape, ha ha ha. As long as I leave this barrier, I will be saved. Realizing that Ishihara behind him didn't catch up, Danzo was overjoyed and ran forward like crazy. But soon, he realized something was wrong. He froze in place. No, how long have I been running? Ishihara's yard is so small, I should have run out long ago. Did I get caught in an illusion again? Danzo was horrified, and a bone-chilling chill enveloped his heart. He didn't notice it at all. When exactly was it? Danzo was going crazy. Even the illusion of the Uchiha clan couldn't be so strong. Is this guy a monster? Danzo roared crazily in his heart. Why don't you keep running? Ishihara's voice sounded extremely clear from in front of him. It seemed like it was just 1 meter in front of him. So close. But, Danzo looked ahead with numbness, but there was no one there. The voice in his ears clearly told him that Ishihara was right in front of him. But his eyes told him that there was no one in front of him. Danzo gritted his teeth and quickly formed a seal, unblock. But the field of vision in front of me still hasn't changed at all. He looked fierce, took out a kunai and stabbed forward crazily. It's still close, if you get closer you can touch me. Take 1 step forward and thrust out again. It's just a little bit close. Take another step forward, thrust out again. A little further and you'll stab me. Danzo stopped, but the voice in his ears haunted him like a nightmare. He looked around angrily and roared crazily. Asshole Ishihara, come out if you dare. As soon as he finished speaking, Ishihara's figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Hiss. Danzo retreated wildly, distanced himself and looked at him in fear. His face was already covered with cold sweat. He didn't notice how Ishihara appeared just now. This situation is so weird. Is this still an illusion? I'm out now, what are you going to do? Ishihara looked at him teasingly. Asshole, do you think you will win? Danzo roared crazily, tore off his clothes and was about to take action. Ishihara suddenly spoke. Do you want to use the 4-elephant seal to die with me? So do you think the me standing in front of you now is my true body? Is the distance between you and me really just that small? The most important thing is, do you think you have turned on Izanagi now or not? He pointed at Danzo and smiled teasingly. Danzo's movements suddenly froze, and he was so nervous that he was sweating all over as he looked at the several Sharingan eyes that were still open on his arms. Could it be that Ishihara could use illusions to fake Izanagi even if he didn't activate it? If he didn't open it, wouldn't it be suicide to cast the 4-symbol seal? What is true and what is false? Danzo's expression was changing, he couldn't be sure at all, and his expression gradually became crazy. He quickly formed seals, performed the Izanagi technique again, and roared. I'm Danzo. I'm Konoha's assistant to the Hokage. I'm the Dark Ninja. I would rather die than be played like a monkey by you. The 4-elephant seals inside, open. Buzz. A large amount of black ink came out of Danzo's body, forming a spherical space and gradually sealing it. He looked at Ishihara who still had a calm expression on his face, not affected by the seal at all, and the madness in his eyes turned into disappointment and frustration. He was completely fooled. Ishihara is still alive, but he is going to die. Danzo was filled with unwillingness. But, the next moment, Danzo was stunned when he looked at his complete body. He's not dead. Did he successfully perform the Izanagi technique just now? But he was not happy yet. Brush. Ishihara's figure appeared in front of him again, looking at him jokingly. Danzo, do you still have the courage to die again? Danzo was stunned for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, of course I do. Ishihara glanced at him in surprise, then stretched out his hand and said with a smile, then let's continue. Danzo died, resurrected, died, resurrected again and again in Ishihara's illusions, and the cycle continued. After each resurrection, Ishihara gave him hope, and then made him despair. Once, twice, 3 times. After the 5th resurrection, Danzo stood there in a daze, looking a little confused, and his body began to tremble. Not everyone has the courage to face death. For the first time, he could muster the courage to activate the 4 elephants seal. The second time he can put his dignity on the line. The third time he could put his pride on the line. The 4th time he could bet on. But when he was resurrected for the 5th time, his energy have been drained away. There was nothing left to support him in mustering up the courage to commit suicide again. He could only stand there shivering, looking blankly at the calm Ishihara ahead. The distance between the two was obviously only 1 meter, but it seemed like they were so far away and so far away. No matter what methods he uses, he can't touch the man in front of him. Not even close. Danzo collapsed. What do you want? After saying these words, Danzo's spine bent. He knows that he has lost. Completely defeated, not only in terms of strength, but also in spirit, he has completely surrendered. What do you want? After Danzo said this, he suddenly noticed that the surrounding environment had undergone some subtle changes. Although it was still the same courtyard, it seemed more real. And Ishihara appeared in front of him again. But Danzo didn't have any extra thoughts, and stood there looking at him with a wooden face. Ishihara was sitting at the stone tea table in the courtyard, drinking tea, and looking at him leisurely. You broke in without my consent, and now you ask me what I want. Of course I want you to die. Danzo's face was still wooden, but he regretted it very much in his heart. If he had known that this would be the result, why would he provoke such a monster in the first place? Kill me. Danzo sighed. It's a bit boring to kill you directly. Ishihara put down the teacup and touched his chin. Danzo was a little surprised when he heard this, and then looked at him with some hope. But, the next moment, puff, Danzo covered his eyes in pain, and blood flowed from his fingers. Ishihara walked out from behind him, holding Shisui's Koto Amatsukami in his hand. The other Ishihara was still sitting next to the tea table. Asshole. Danzo was going crazy. He was still casting illusions on himself at this time. Is he still a human? Ishihara ignored him and calmly dug out one of the Sharingan on Danzo's arm. Then he came to the tea table with 2 Sharingan and sat down. The previous Ishihara disappeared. Ishihara raised his chin. Tell me about the Izanagi technique. He originally wanted to get this forbidden technique through the Uchiha clan. Since Danzo came to him, he would not let it go. Danzo raised his head, expressionless. If I hand it over, will you let me go? No, Ishihara said calmly. Then I won't say it. This is my last insistence as a high-level Konoha. Although he had expected it, Danzo was still a little disappointed and sighed. That's not up to you. Ishihara laughed. At this time, he was still trying to get sympathy from himself. Unfortunately, I found the wrong person. Illusionary space. Buzz. Danzo was shocked, with an ominous premonition, and his expression became tense. What do you want to do? Ishihara stood up, took a step forward and appeared in front of Danzo, smiling. Let you taste the taste of Koto Amatsukami. Danzo's pupils shrank suddenly, and his breathing stagnated. No one knows the horror of Koto Amatsukami better than him. He would rather die than be hit. Shisui's Koto Amatsukami has been used by me, and it can't be activated a second time in a short time. Don't worry, Koto Amatsukami, I can do it too. Ishihara's words made Danzo's expression freeze, and he looked at him in disbelief. Before Danzo could figure out why Ishihara could master Koto Amatsukami, a terrifying energy surged into his mind, making his thoughts stagnate. It seemed like a moment had passed, and it seemed like a long time had passed. Danzo's thoughts began to flow again, and he looked at Ishihara with fear in his eyes. If I hand over Konoha's forbidden technique, are you sure you will let me go? Ishihara couldn't help but feel awe in his heart when he saw this scene. He was observing Danzo from beginning to end, but Danzo had almost no flaws from the outside. Even though his words didn't make sense, Danzo said it very naturally. He didn't realize that his will had been tampered with at all. And the consumption of the illusion space was not as large as he imagined, and it could be used for the second time in a row. But it didn't seem to be a bad thing, and Ishihara smiled. Of course, it didn't matter to him whether Danzo was killed or not. On the contrary, this big show of Uchiha would be boring without Danzo. And he was a little dissatisfied with the progress of the Uchiha clan's eye-opening. It was just right for Danzo to increase his strength. Give me the Izanagi technique now, Ishihara said lightly. Okay. Danzo gritted his teeth and began to dictate the Izanagi technique. After listening, Ishihara fell into thought. The Izanagi technique is to permanently blind a Sharingan with more than 3 Magatama as a price, and can turn things that happen to you in a period of time that are not good for you into nothing, and only choose things that are good for you to become reality. It is also jokingly called the Little Invincible technique. But just looking at the content of the Izanagi technique, it seems that you can't see anything. Although it is a forbidden technique, Ishihara learned it after just reading it once. Open the Byakugan. Open the transparent world. Then he used the life chain to connect to the Sharingan dug from Danzo, and then cast Izanagi. Buzz. A subtle wave emanated from the Sharingan, affecting his body. Is this Yin-Tun chakra? And the special pupil power of the Sharingan? At that moment, Ishihara saw the source of this special wave, and his eyes suddenly flashed. Yin-Tun chakra creates the tangible from the intangible. But in Izanagi, it seems to be the other way around. Create the intangible from the tangible. After casting Izanagi, his body is between the tangible and the intangible. He can affect reality. He can also be affected by reality. However, when Izanagi ends, Yin-Tun chakra will change the aspects that are not favorable to him from visible to invisible according to his thoughts. But the powerful aspects are retained. This is Izanagi's principle. Diaresis, another ability involving yin and yang escape. Ishihara was pleasantly surprised. That's right, the process of Izanagi's performance is yin-yang escape, not just yin escape. The exchange of illusion and reality is like a brief simulation of the process of creating life. For a moment, inspiration began to flash in Ishihara's mind. His understanding of yin-yang escape has gone one step further. You analyzed the forbidden art Izanagi, you had an epiphany, and you created the secret art Izanagi training method. Izanagi cultivation method. By practicing yin-yang escape, you can master the power of creation. After mastering it, you can enter the Izanagi state. Each time you perform, get it well, you need to consume a lot of yin-yang escape energy. Hiss. After digesting the information in his mind, Ishihara couldn't help but take a breath and was pleasantly surprised. After mastering this cultivation method, you can actually reverse life and death. Simply appalling. Although there are restrictions, who cares? After all, this is an invincible skill to save life. Of course, the threshold for this secret technique is also extremely high, and the 6th path level is only qualified to study it. But Ishihara doesn't care. It's just the 6th level, he will reach it sooner or later. Ishihara felt hot in his heart, but for the time being he could only look at plum blossoms to quench his thirst, and quickly calmed down. He looked at Danzo again, wanting to see what other surprises he could give him. Where are the other forbidden techniques? Danzo took out a scroll from his body and handed it over. It seems that he originally planned to hand over these secret skills to Ishihara. Ishihara took the scroll, opened it and took a look, then frowned slightly. Reincarnation of dirty soil. Orochimaru has been studying the forbidden technique of reincarnation in the earth. However, since he obtained the immortal human body cultivation method, he has focused most of his energy on cultivation, and his research on the reincarnation of the dirty earth has almost stagnated. So in fact, there is currently no complete or perfect version of the art of reincarnation in the ninja world. That's right, the art of reincarnation recorded in Konoha is not perfect, and there are still a lot of flaws that have not been improved. I don't know whether the second Hokage was afraid of this ninjutsu and therefore deliberately did not leave a complete version, or whether his research was not completely completed. But thinking about the things related to the reincarnation of the Dirty Land, Ishihara couldn't help but feel hot in his heart. Although he already has the immortal body cultivation method. But even if the body is completely transformed into an immortal, it is not immortality, just immortality. So he has been exploring the next step of the immortal human body. The reason why we study the blood inheritance limits and forbidden techniques is to study the 10 tails in the future, and it is also a backup method for immortality. But some time ago, he had a glimmer of inspiration when he was taking stock of Konoha's forbidden arts. The corpses are sealed away. When casting this forbidden technique, you can summon the god of death. He didn't know if this so-called god of death was a god, but he knew that this god of death must live long enough. Of course Ishihara doesn't want to be that ugly god of death. He wants to be the kind of Shinigami from Soul Society. Even become a spiritual king. But the god of death and the ninja are completely two power systems. He needs to develop Reiatsu, or some kind of energy that replaces Reiatsu. This cannot be accomplished overnight. There is a lot to research. Among them, it is related to the underworld and the undead. In Ishihara's imagination, Hades is his soul society. So this reincarnation in the dirt is also an opportunity for him. He hurriedly opened the scroll and read it. After a while, he raised his head and let out a long breath. The art of reincarnation in dirty soil is more complicated than I thought. First of all, reincarnation in the dirty earth belongs to the art of spiritualism. And it is summoning the undead from the underworld. But you must know that the psychic technique achieves coordinate anchoring by signing a blood contract with the psychic beast. The art of reincarnation in the dirty soil achieves coordinate anchoring through the genetic material of the undead during its lifetime. But the undead are dead people. It is completely different from a living psychic beast. Even if Ishihara started researching it from scratch, he didn't know how much time it would take. It's simply incredible that the second Hokage could complete such a psychic contract. To make things even more complicated, let the undead take entities. That is, a sacrifice. This step also involves the use of yin-yang escape. The second Hokage has been able to develop so many forbidden techniques. I'm afraid his research on yin-yang escape has been very in-depth. Ishihara couldn't help but admire the second Hokage. Although his strength is not as good as that of the first Hokage and Madara, in theory he is probably stronger than both of them. Try to analyze it. Ishihara took a deep breath, and then suddenly disappeared. Danzo was stunned for a moment, but before he could react, Ishihara appeared again. His eyes widened in shock. Ishihara has indeed mastered the space-time ninjutsu. Mist Ninja Village. Temporary base by the lake. Ishihara was practicing when suddenly the Mudden clone came back. Ontology, there are some things that you need to deal with. After saying that, the Mudden clone dissipated directly. A large number of memories flooded into his mind, and even Ishihara couldn't help but feel his head swelling in pain. It went so well. After learning about the clone's experience, Ishihara was a little surprised, but soon his attention was attracted by the art of reincarnation. To cast the clone, let the clone go back first. Then he went to the Anbu guarding here in Mist Ninja Village and said, I need a death row prisoner, the stronger the better. Yes, the Anbu of Mist Ninja Village did not dare to neglect Ishihara's request and hurriedly complied with it. Soon, they brought a strong death row prisoner, who had obviously been sealed by Anbu and could not move at all. Ishihara thanked him, then grabbed the death row prisoner and entered the experimental room, took out a scroll from the shelf next to him and opened it. Suddenly a corpse appeared in front of him. This is the entity of the elder of the Ghost Lantern clan that he studied before. Ishihara cut off a relatively intact piece of flesh and blood tissue, came to the open space of the laboratory, and prepared to use the art of reincarnation from dirty soil. The art of carving, put in genetic material. Finally, there is a living sacrifice. The life link is used to link to genetic material and living sacrifices. Turn on the eye roll. Open up a transparent world. After doing all this, Ishihara took a breath and lightly pressed his hands on the technique. The art of reincarnation from dirty soil. Buzz. The technique quickly focused on the sacrifice. At the same time, a mysterious wave dispersed. It's very similar to the fluctuations when using psychic techniques. But the current Ishihara is already different from the one he was when he first used the psychic technique. With the blessing of the art of reincarnation from the dirty soil, his perception seemed to be expanded countless times, and it seemed that he spanned a long distance. Then he saw a gray world. This is Hades. Ishihara was refreshed and felt a unique aura. The fluctuations generated by the technique of reincarnation in the dirty soil had a clear target, and the corresponding undead were quickly found in the underworld. Immediately after the psychic contract was activated, the undead were summoned. Wow! As the undead enters the body of the sacrifice, the mysterious yin-yang escape appeared again, and a large amount of paper scraps began to condense, gradually condensing into the original appearance of the undead. Yin and yang escape to create life. This thought flashed through Ishihara's mind, and then he continued to observe. Until the dead are completely resurrected. The art of reincarnation in dirty soil is completed. Every detail of the entire process fell into Ishihara's insight. You observed and experienced the art of filthy earth reincarnation, you had an epiphany, and you developed the secret art of filthy earth reincarnation. Undead reincarnation. After mastering it, you can summon the undead from another world. The undead are under your control, and their strength varies according to the sacrifices. It's very similar to the earth reincarnation technique that Orochimaru used when he first resurrected the first Hokage. Ishihara thought thoughtfully after digesting the information in his mind. He was in no hurry to improve this secret technique. Instead, he carefully recalled the world of the dead that he had just glimpsed, the underworld. This was the soul society he imagined. But now he faces a problem. How to enter the underworld? Do you want to die for once? That's not a good idea. Ishihara frowned and thought for a moment, then his eyes lit up. He thought of a technique that might help him. The art of spiritualization. After having the idea, Ishihara directly released the wooden escape clone, and then used the wooden escape clone again to teleport over Konoha village. Watching Ishihara disappear and reappear again, Danzo became numb. Do you have the art of spiritual transformation in your hands? Ishihara asked impatiently. Danzo was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. The art of spiritual transformation is the secret art of the Kato family. Only the Kato family has it. But now the Kato family has declined, and there are only a few Chunin in the village. Hearing this, Ishihara immediately said, I want the art of spiritual transformation. Danzo's expression changed slightly, but he still nodded. Ishihara said, now take out the Flying Thunder God technique. Don't you already have space ninjutsu? Danzo asked with some confusion. Ishihara frowned, stop talking nonsense. Danzo sighed, took out another scroll from his body, and handed it over. Ishihara opened it and saw that it was indeed the Flying Thunder God's technique. He glanced through it quickly. You have read the art of Flying Thunder God, you have mastered the art of Flying Thunder God. Sure enough, the Flying Thunder God's technique is almost the same as my teleportation technique. There is not much room for improvement. However, many methods of using the Flying Thunder God technique are very useful to him. He looked at the nervous Danzo and said, the Flying Thunder God's technique is already complete, and I can't improve it. So the only thing that can be traded is the art of reincarnation. Danzo heard a flash of anger on his face. Ishihara didn't care and started making the inheritance scroll directly. Soon the scroll was completed, and he threw it directly to Danzo. Don't forget my spiritual transformation technique, you can go. Danzo took the scroll and left without saying a word. No matter how angry he was, he could only hold it in. But before leaving, he opened the inheritance scroll and obtained the art of reincarnation, and then walked out. Wow! As soon as Danzo came out, he saw a large group of people rushing over from the opposite side. The leader, the third Hokage, stared at him with blazing eyes. Danzo, what did you do? Danzo's face was extremely ugly. This time he went to find Ishihara. Not only did his plan to use other gods to control him fail, but he was even coerced into handing over all the forbidden techniques. The most important thing is that without Ishihara's support, he now lacks the confidence to face the third Hokage. Nothing, just a deal with Ishihara. The third Hokage's expression changed drastically. He stepped forward and asked in a low voice, what did you trade? Danzo said expressionlessly. The Flying Thunder God's art, the art of reincarnation from dirty soil. Asshole, you actually reincarnated into dirt. The third Hokage roared angrily, but when he saw the looks in the eyes of the people around him, he hurriedly stopped and asked sternly. Where is the inheritance scroll? Danzo's face changed slightly, and before he could hide the inheritance scroll, the third Hokage snatched it away and opened it. Why is there only impure world reincarnation? Here the third Hokage and Danzo were arguing. Fugaku, who came with the third Hokage, heard the conversation between the two and his face changed immediately. If Danzo used the impure world reincarnation technique to deal with them, the Uchiha would be in danger. Fugaku immediately rushed to Ishihara's small courtyard. Stop him. The third Hokage, who was still arguing next to him, changed his face and rushed forward to stop them. But it's too late. Fugaku took the lead and stepped into the courtyard. The third Hokage rushed in immediately. The two immediately started to quarrel, which was full of gunpowder. Fugaku, I order you to get out of here immediately. Are you kidding me, Naruto? Doesn't it count if you said this? Are Uchiha going to openly disobey my orders? Hokage-sama, don't forget, this is a private matter. Ishihara frowned and said, if you want to quarrel, go outside. Don't come here to disturb me. Fugaku and the third Hokage stopped immediately, but still stared at each other without giving in. At this moment, Danzo from outside came in and said a few words in the ear of the third Hokage. The third Hokage gave Fugaku a deep look, then turned and left. Fugaku was not very happy in his heart. Since the third Hokage dared to leave, it meant that he was sure of dealing with Uchiha. We can't wait any longer. Go back and bring all the clan members who want to open their eyes. He whispered to Dao Huo who was following him. Dao Huo's face changed slightly, he nodded hurriedly and rushed out. Soon, only Fugaku and two Uchiha clan members were left in the courtyard. One is Uchiha Yashura, and the other is also one of the squad leaders of the police force, Hiriko. Fugaku said apologetically. Mr. Ishihara, please wait a moment. Ishihara glanced at him in surprise and nodded. He knew that Fugaku was going to make a desperate move this time. But this is a good thing for him, it can open more kaleidoscopes. Soon, Inari returned, bringing 3 Uchiha clan members with him. Fugaku breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this, and said hurriedly, the 5 of them are the ones who want to activate the Mangekyo Sharingan this time. Ishihara nodded. If there are 5 people, they should be able to replicate the pupil technique. Thinking of this, he couldn't wait to say, then let's start. Soon, 5 Uchihas who wanted to turn on the kaleidoscope sat in a row with anxiety and anticipation. Ishihara deployed the sound barrier, and then began to teach the 5 people the kaleidoscope eye-opening technique. Then quietly, he opened the illusion space. And the seeds of the idea were planted for them to activate the copy-related pupil technique. With my current illusion ability, I should be successful this time. Ishihara started to look forward to it. Soon, the 5 people began to operate the secret technique. The moment their life force was extracted, they howled in pain. Ishihara observed them calmly and frowned slightly. It seems that only 2 people have the possibility to activate the kaleidoscope this time. Many experiences allowed him to easily judge how many years of life the experimental subject would need to open the kaleidoscope. Then calculate according to their ages, and you can quickly draw a conclusion. 3 of them could not turn on the kaleidoscope even if they died of old age. However, Ishihara had no intention of reminding him, but took the opportunity to observe more carefully. Perhaps these failed experiments will be more useful for your own research. Time passes little by little. The faces of the 5 Uchiha also gradually change. The hair begins to lose its luster and become gray, and the skin becomes loose and wrinkled. Fugaku and others next to him were so nervous that they broke into cold sweat. Dao Huo's eyes widened and he was so nervous that he didn't dare to breathe. Then they watched as 3 of them's hair turned pure white and age spots appeared on their faces. The second elder said in a trembling voice, "Are they going to die of old age?" Fugaku trembled all over, and suddenly stepped forward with horror in his heart, and yelled crazily. Hiriko, Yoda, Ryo, stop it quickly. Stop it. The 3 people inside the barrier looked miserable. They also knew that they had no chance, so they had no choice but to stop the secret technique. But looking at their old bodies, the three of them collapsed. Second. The three Uchiha cried. Not only did they fail to turn on the kaleidoscope, they also completely lost their previous healthy bodies. The feeling of powerlessness in their body makes them despair. Ishihara looked at them and shook his head secretly. Sure enough, this is their limit, and there is no potential to turn on the kaleidoscope. In fact, his secret technique has cut down the threshold limit for opening the kaleidoscope, but even so, there may still be hidden conditions. That's lifespan and the rate of mutation of special organs. However, it is obvious that these three losers did not meet the requirements. Just then, buzz, boom, boom, two huge waves of cold chakra suddenly burst out. The three crying Uchiha turned around and saw two other tribesmen who had turned on their kaleidoscopes. The strong contrast immediately made them collapse even more. They are all from the Uchiha clan, and they are all three Magatama, and they even opened their eyes earlier. They also spent a lot of life, but their companions turned on the kaleidoscope, and all they got was their old bodies. The huge gap and physical weakness caused the three of them to collapse directly to the ground. This change made the other two Uchihas who had turned on the kaleidoscope less excited and fell into silence. Ishihara lifted the barrier, and Fugaku and others hurried forward to help the three people who fell to the ground, whispering comfort. However, Ishihara looked at the two people who opened the Mangekyo, with a look of expectation. Uchiha Hiriko, Uchiha Yasada. Next, it's my turn to study your eye skills. Ishihara's words made the two people nervous. But fortunately, they had the explanation of Tiehuo, Daohuo and others before, so the two people quickly calmed down. Soon, the two knew their eye skills. Hiriko's eye skills are the Pillar Gate, a barrier-type eye skills. Yasada's eye skills are Peach Blossoms, a healing eye skills. Failed again. Ishihara was in a bad mood. Now his illusion is very strong, but the seed of idea planted by such an illusion still failed. But he didn't know that before him, Anahiro had hypnotized them for a long time with his Mangekyo. So much so that Anahiro, who had just opened the Mangekyo yesterday, was almost blind at this moment. When Fugaku and others found that their plan had failed, disappointment was almost written on their faces. Ishihara didn't give up and asked the two to continue to perform the secret technique and open the second pupil technique. But the second pupil technique is related to the previous pupil technique and still has no copying ability. He completely gave up the fantasy and readjusted his mentality. Since it is not available now, he will continue the experiment in the future. Anyway, there are enough Uchiha people. Next, he began to study the Mangekyo of the two, and his expression gradually became surprised. Hiriko's pupil technique Pillar Gate is to form a unique barrier through pillars. In this barrier, his own strength, speed, and even the power of ninjutsu will be strengthened. And the enemy will be suppressed. Even if it is just like this pupil technique is not simple. But, more importantly, this Pillar Gate barrier can actually block space-time ninjutsu. A gleam of light flashed in Ishihara's eyes. He didn't expect to get a pupil technique that could restrain space-time ninjutsu. What a surprise! This pupil technique is so useful for dealing with Obito. He immediately conducted a careful study. You experienced and analyzed the pupil technique Pillar Gate, you had an epiphany, and you created the secret technique Pillar Gate training method. Pillar Gate training method. After mastering it, you can set up a Pillar Gate barrier, and you will gain a buff effect within the barrier, and the enemy will gain a negative effect, and it can block space-time ninjutsu. You experienced and analyzed the pupil technique Reverse Pillar Gate, you had an epiphany, and you created the secret technique Reverse Pillar Gate training method. Reverse Pillar Gate training method. After mastering it, you can break any barrier. Reverse Pillar Gate is Hiriko's second pupil technique. After digesting the information in his mind, Ishihara nodded. This pupil technique is very strong and extremely practical, and may be used in the future. Next, Ishihara began to analyze Uchiha Yashira's Mangekyo Sharingan. He was even more surprised. After performing the pupil technique, a peach blossom that only the person can see will form, and the peach blossom can quickly heal his own injuries. If the body is not injured, it can also amplify all aspects of the body's abilities. Not only is it a medical ability, it also has an amplification effect. What Ishihara cares about is that the peach blossom pupil technique can heal any injury, as long as it is not dead, even if it is only a breath, it can also be healed. It's simply a nanny's magic skill. It's even more exaggerated than Tsunade's medical ninjutsu. But after figuring out Yashira's second pupil technique, Ishihara was a little shocked. Damage transfer. This pupil technique can actually transfer other people's injuries to oneself, or transfer one's own injuries to others. Li Dai Dao Zhong. An idiom flashed through Ishihara's mind, but it was extremely appropriate for this pupil technique. There were 2 life-saving divine eye techniques in a row. It's so weird. You experienced and analyzed the eye technique Peach Blossom, left eye, you had an epiphany, and you developed the secret technique Peach Blossom. Peach Blossom. After mastering it, you can cast a peach blossom petal that only you can see. The petals can be used to treat your own injuries or amplify yourself. You experienced and analyzed the eye technique Peach Blossom, right eye, you had an epiphany, and you developed the secret technique Peach Blossom. Peach Blossom. After mastering it, you can transfer other people's injuries to yourself, or transfer your own injuries to others. After digesting the information in his mind, Ishihara breathed a sigh of relief. A total of 4 eye techniques are all in hand. Today's eye technique harvest is great. Fugaku was excited when he saw the 2 clansmen who opened the Mangekyo. The current Uchiha clan, Fugaku, Anahime, Hiriko, Yashira, plus Hitachi, this is the unparalleled Mangekyo Sharingan. And this is the premise that Tiehuo's Mangekyo was dug out by him. 5 pairs of Mangekyo Sharingan. Invincible, Fugaku said excitedly. Mr. Ishihara, we still have some things to deal with, so we will go back first. Ishihara nodded and said, don't forget to continue to send people to conduct experiments. Fugaku's excited expression suddenly stagnated, and he responded reluctantly with a stiff face, yes. After leaving the yard, Fugaku and Anahime and others looked at each other and saw the unwillingness in each other's eyes. But they said nothing and left quickly in the awe of the other clan leaders. After returning to the Uchiha clan and entering Fugaku's secret room, someone finally couldn't hold it back. Clan leader, do we still have to endure Ishihara? The current Uchiha clan has 5 pairs of Mangekyo Sharingan. The entire Uchiha clan has never been so powerful in history. But such a powerful Uchiha actually had to submit to one person. It was more than a shame. It was simply a great shame. Fugaku's eyes were also spitting fire, his face full of unwillingness. But there is no way, who let them have 26 seals planted by Ishihara? At this time, Uchiha Hiriko said, Clan leader, my pupil technique may be able to remove the seal. Fugaku's face suddenly changed when he heard this, and he asked in shock, really? Hiriko took a deep breath and said carefully, I can't be sure, but there is a great possibility. Do you want to try it? Everyone's eyes fell on Fugaku, waiting for him to make a decision. Fugaku's face changed, and finally took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, don't worry, lifting the seal may be noticed by Ishihara. Before that, we must deal with the Konoha high level first. Although the others were reluctant, they still obeyed the order. Afterwards, Fugaku stood up and looked around with a serious expression. Let's go, it's time to end this farce. Yes, Uchiha Inahori and others followed Fugaku with excitement, and a group of people filed out of the Uchiha clan. The target is the root organization base where Danzo is. Ishihara's courtyard. After the Uchiha left, Akamichi clan's Akamichi Choza came in. Mr. Ishihara, our Akamichi clan hopes to trade all our secret techniques. Can? Ishihara smiled and nodded. After completing the Akamichi clan's experiment, the purpose of his trip to Konoha was almost completed. On the other side, Danzo received information as soon as he returned to the root organization base. Danzo-sama, after we left, the Uchiha clan entered Mr. Ishihara's yard, and this time they went to 5-3 Magatama Uchiha. Looking at the worried Toruni Danzo, he smiled coldly. No matter how many kaleidoscopes they turn on, it's useless. The strongest person in Konoha has never been Uchiha, but the first Hokage. He immediately gave the order. Bring the prisoners on death row and the spies immediately. Yes. He went deep into the base without stopping and came to a secret room with a high level of confidentiality. Soon, he walked out of the secret room with something in his hand. The cells of the first Hokage. The body tissue of the second Hokage. Then he came to an open space in the base and began to carve out the technique. The technique of the art of reincarnation in the dirty earth. Soon, several death row prisoners were brought over. 2 of them were selected as sacrifices, and they were directly sealed with magic and placed in the center of the dirty soil reincarnation magic. After placing the cells of the first Hokage and the body tissue of the second Hokage, Danzo immediately began to summon. Buzz. There were strong energy fluctuations in the technique, and then a large amount of paper scraps condensed on the 2 struggling sacrifices. Gradually, 2 figures appeared. It is none other than the first Hokage Senju Hashirama and the second Hokage Senju Tobirama. Danzo looked a little excited. First generation, sir, teacher. There was a commotion among the surrounding root organization members, and then their expressions became fanatical. This is the founder of Konoha, a legend in the ninja world. Senju Tobirama looked at Danzo expressionlessly and sighed. I didn't expect that the person who uses this technique would be my disciple. Although he himself has used this forbidden technique several times. But in fact, he is still constantly improving and testing, and this forbidden technique has not yet achieved the effect he desired. Unexpectedly, it was his disciple who finally completed this forbidden technique. This made him happy and a little heavy at the same time. The first Hokage has been looking around curiously since he appeared, like a big sunny boy. Oh, these are Konoha ninjas. They feel a bit weak. And why is it so dark here? Senju Tobirama ignored his elder brother whose brain was disconnected and immediately activated his perception ability to sense the situation in the outside world. To his relief, there seemed to be no fighting going on outside. But the next moment, Senju Tobirama's expression turned stern. He actually sensed a chakra that was second only to that of his eldest brother when he was alive. Who is he? Senju Tobirama's sharp eyes fell on Danzo. Danzo immediately understood. It's Ishihara. Is it because of him that you didn't hesitate to use the reincarnation of the earth to summon us? Senju Tobirama's expression became solemn. They are now in the state of reincarnation, but they cannot exert their pre-birth strength, so things are a bit tricky. Danzo nodded and shook his head solemnly. The reason why we summoned 2 adults this time has something to do with Ishihara, but our current enemy is Uchiha. Senju Tobirama's face changed slightly, and he looked a little ugly. Uchiha, he's really restless. The first Hokage frowned slightly and said displeased Ly. Tobirama, don't talk about Uchiha like that. Danzo, please tell me what's going on. The Chia clan is going to launch a coup. As soon as Danzo's words came out of his mouth, he suddenly felt chills all over his body. Boom! A terrifying chakra burst out from the first Hokage's body. At this moment, he no longer looked lazy, but looked extremely majestic and terrifying. What did you say? The first Hokage looked terrifying. To him, Konoha was the most important thing. No matter who it was, even if it was his brother Madara who attacked Konoha, he would kill it with his own hands. Not to mention the Uchiha clan. Senju Tobirama's face looked ugly again. Uchiha, you have indeed rebelled. Danzo swallowed his saliva and said hurriedly. The Uchiha clan has always been dissatisfied with the rights and treatment they have received, and their rift with the village is getting bigger and bigger. Some time ago, I disrupted the Uchiha clan's plan to launch a rebellion. This time they plan to stage another rebellion. Senju Tobirama frowned and shouted. Isn't it possible that the Uchiha clan cannot be pacified with the strength of Konoha? Senju Hashirama said. Don't worry Tobirama, Uchiha is also our companion. Let's see if there is any room for relaxation first. Danzo's heart sank. He didn't want the first Hokage and the second Hokage to investigate. He smiled bitterly and said. First generation sir, second generation sir, now the Uchiha clan has at least 3 pairs of Mangekyo Sharingan. What? The expressions of the first Hokage and the second Hokage changed slightly. The Uchiha of this era actually had 3 pairs of kaleidoscopes. Even in Uchiha Madara's era, the Uchiha clan only had 3 pairs of kaleidoscopes at the same time. The Madara brothers and their father Tajima. But now there is another triple-double. Could it be that there is another guy in the Uchiha clan who can rival Madara? The second Hokage felt a little unbelievable, and his face was a little cold. 3 pairs of Mangekyo, even if Konoha can calm down, there will be huge losses. Big brother, it's time for us to take action. The first Hokage looked heavy. When Madara attacked Konoha, he killed his brothers to protect his ideals and the village. Now that he has to attack Madara's descendants, he sighed. War is inevitable in any era. Swish. The two disappeared immediately. Danzo breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. His subordinate Feng asked in confusion. Danzo, if the first and second generations knew the information you concealed, would it be bad? Danzo smiled immediately after hearing this. You don't understand. He knew the second Hokage as a teacher very well. Although he concealed the information, it was an indisputable fact that the Uchiha clan would launch a war against the top leaders of Konoha. Under normal circumstances, the second Hokage might sacrifice him to stabilize the Uchiha clan. But the current Uchiha is too strong. 3 pairs or even more kaleidoscopes would make even the second Hokage extremely fearful when he was alive. How could he rest assured that the Uchiha clan would continue to grow stronger? What's more, the second Hokage himself characterized Uchiha as an evil clan. So Danzo knew very well that after the second Hokage was summoned, he would no longer need to operate it in the future. All he was worried about was whether the second Hokage would punish him if he discovered what he had done. The Uchiha clan thought this was their most glorious peak, but they didn't know that this was also the beginning of their loneliness. Let's go and see how the Uchiha clan was defeated. Danzo led the people outside leisurely. He is extremely confident in the strength of the first Hokage and the second Hokage. Several figures were rushing out of the Uchiha clan, running wildly. This is Uchiha's 5-person team: Fugaku, Itachi, Inari, Yashira, and Hiriko. Itachi was also called by Fugaku to join the action. Fugaku was at the front, and the open 3 Magatama transformed into a kaleidoscope state. He stared straight ahead at the location of the root organization base and shouted in a low voice. Don't give Danzo any chance, take action as soon as you arrive. Prepare. Yes. Whoosh. The first Hokage and the second Hokage appeared on the roof of a house, feeling satisfied looking at the now peaceful Konoha. Especially seeing the children playing, the two of them felt better. This is the Konoha they want. But suddenly, the two of them looked into the distance. There, 5 figures with astonishing momentum were coming quickly, and as they got closer, their momentum continued to increase. Kionju Tobarama's expression changed drastically, and his face was full of disbelief. This feeling is very much like turning on the chakra of the kaleidoscope. But how is it possible? 5 people. Tobarama, your perception is correct, right? 5 people turned on the kaleidoscope. The first Hokage was shocked and asked seriously. He doesn't have the strength he had before he was alive. He has 5 pairs of Mangekyo Sharingan. If his eye skills are weird, it might be a bit tricky. Senju Tobarama took a deep breath, his pupils shaking. It's unmistakable, definitely 5 pairs of Mangekyo Sharingan. Danzo, who had just walked out of the root organization base, almost trembled when he heard these words and turned pale with horror. Is Fugaku crazy? He turned on 5 pairs of kaleidoscopes. He was extremely lucky. Fortunately, he immediately reincarnated in the dirt after returning. Otherwise, facing such an Uchiha, he and the people in the root organization would have no power to resist. How arrogant. Seeing the unbridled release of Fugaku and others' momentum on the opposite side, Tobarama's face turned cold. Brother. I see. The first Hokage took a step forward, and then the chakra on his body suddenly burst out. Boom. The terrifying momentum directly tore apart the tiles on the roof, and the shockwave of chakra burst out mixed with the broken tiles. Stop. Fugaku's face changed drastically when he felt this amazing momentum. When his eyes fell on the first Hokage, Fugaku's pupils shrank suddenly and his expression became extremely solemn. Trouble. That fool Danzo used the earth reincarnation to resurrect the first Hokage and the second Hokage. Uchiha, who was once the enemy of the first Hokage, naturally knew the terrifying strength of the first Hokage. That's a legend. It's a legend. The entire Uchiha clan can't breathe. Daohuo and others looked at each other with fear in their eyes. Even the momentum was a little weaker. Fugaku's heart sank when he saw this. He couldn't go on like this, he said in a deep voice. Don't be afraid. The first Hokage who was reincarnated in the dirty land does not have the same strength as before. And don't forget, we have 5 pairs of Mangekyo Sharingan. Uchiha Inari and others immediately felt certain when they heard this. Yes, they have 5 pairs of kaleidoscopes. So what if he is the first Hokage? Itachi fell on the first Hokage with an expressionless expression, and a thought suddenly flashed in his mind. Diaresis, this is the first Hokage Senju Hashirama. I wonder if he can defeat Ishihara. He took a deep breath and didn't dare to think about it. Fugaku looked at the clan members who had regained their composure and felt relieved, but his expression was still extremely solemn. Danzo, why can the Uchiha clan be able to activate so many Mangekyo Sharingan? Please tell me carefully. Senju Tobirama stared at Fugaku and the others solemnly, but asked about Danzo. Danzo knew that he could not hide it, so he told Ishihara's information. The filth reincarnation that summons the second-generation master was perfected by Ishihara, and he should still be in that courtyard now. The first Hokage and the second Hokage looked extremely solemn. It was impossible for Danzo to lie to them with information that could be verified quickly. The second Hokage took a long breath and marveled. Got it, Zhao. At only 6 or 7 years old, I was able to perfect my art of reincarnation from dirty soil. Mastered the space and time ninjutsu before learning my flying thunder god jutsu. The illusion ability is more terrifying than the Mangekyo Sharingan. The power of his physical skills is comparable to the 8 gates of the ninjutsu. He is suspected to have mastered a large number of secret techniques, forbidden techniques, and even bloodline limits. From this, it can be inferred that the nature and form changes of his 5 types of chakras have probably reached an extremely high level. Even yin-yang escape is the same. What a monster. The second-generation Hokage was unable to calm down. He didn't even want to believe that such a person existed in reality. Such a person shouldn't exist. The second-generation Hokage looked in the direction of Ishihara, and a fierce look flashed in his eyes. Not only that, the first-generation Hokage also looked a little solemn. If I'm not wrong, that child should have mastered wood escape. Wood escape. The second-generation Hokage was shocked and a little unbelievable. Brother, are you sure you didn't perceive it wrong? It can't be wrong, the wood escape aura on him is very strong. The first-generation Hokage looked determined. Itachi said solemnly. Yes, Danzo must die. He knew very well that compared to the third Hokage, who had become indecisive, Danzo was more decisive and ruthless. And the hostility towards Uchiha is also the greatest and strongest. If Danzo is not killed, he will keep targeting Uchiha. So he must die, and it must be a reasonable death. A cold light flashed in Itachi's eyes. He must use his own methods to minimize the impact of this war. Second. Early the next morning, before dawn, people from various major families were already preparing to head to Ishihara's courtyard. The Uchiha clan, Fugaku and others were busy all night without rest, and Inahuo kept using the kaleidoscope eye technique to plant illusion seeds for others. After communicating with Nara Shikaku last night, the Akamichi clan and the Yamanaka clan have also made the decision to fully trade with Ishihara. But while they were still preparing, someone has already arrived in front of Ishihara's yard. Danzo looked at the inconspicuous courtyard in front of him with extremely fiery eyes. As long as I plant another god for Ishihara later, he will be his puppet. All his secrets will be his own. And Ishihara will also become the tool for him to ascend to the position of Hokage and unify the ninja world. Thinking of this, Danzo couldn't wait to speak. Mr. Ishihara, can I go in? Ishihara, who was still sleeping, was woken up and cursed angrily, get out. 120. Outside the door, Danzo's eyes were full of anger. Asshole, I'll call you Mr. Ishihara to give you face, but if I don't give you face, you're nothing. Bang, he made a seal, then pushed open the door and broke in. Toruni and Feng, who were following behind, looked calm. How dare you disobey Lord Danzo, this kid is doomed. The two then moved the knocked unconscious Anbu to the side and guarded the door on their behalf. Silently waiting for Danzo's triumphant return. After Danzo entered the courtyard, he walked straight towards the bedroom. Squeak. The door opened, and Ishihara walked out of the room with an angry face. He looked at Danzo and said coldly. You broke in without my consent. Do you want to die? Danzo stared at Ishihara greedily, feeling very excited. As long as he controls the man in front of him, his dream can come true. Soon, it'll be ready in no time. Ishihara felt chilled by the look, and said coldly, I don't like the look in your eyes very much. He stepped forward. Danzo's face darkened, and he walked towards Ishihara with an arrogant expression, saying disdainfully, "I don't like the way you look at me either. He's just a disciple of that traitor Orochimaru, and he actually dares to show off his power in Konoha. Who do you think you are? You are nothing. And I am the future Hokage of Konoha village. What qualifications do you have to dare to talk to me like this?" Ishihara frowned. Why is this guy so crazy about coming here? Perhaps because his ideal was about to be achieved, Danzo became more and more excited as he talked. "Do you think I'm seeking death by provoking you?" Before Ishihara could answer, Danzo shouted, "Arrogance." His eyes are full of hatred. "You're just like those Uchiha, you're too arrogant. No one is invincible, even the first Hokage has an enemy like Uchiha Madara. Don't think that you are invincible just because people from Konoha praise you for a few words. You're not even close yet." Danzo looked arrogant and stared at Ishihara with contempt. Ishihara touched his nose, looking a little weird. It seemed like this was the first time since he time traveled that he had been ridiculed like this. "So am I going to show off and slap you in the face next?" Thinking about it, I'm still a little excited. At this time, the distance between the two was only 2 meters, which could be said to be within a stone's throw. Ishihara looked at Danzo expectantly. "So what do you want to do? Come on, hurry up and give me a chance to show off. I really want to try it." Danzo looked at him with extremely angry eyes. He hated the feeling of being stared at like this, as if he was a clown. "I hope you can keep this look later. I will definitely let you," Danzo said through gritted teeth, but his words suddenly stopped. Ishihara was slightly stunned, and it was during this gap that before Danzo finished speaking, he activated Shisui's Mangekyo. No god. Buzz. Special fluctuations spread. Ishihara made a move. Danzo stared at him with his eyes fixed on him, feeling a little expectant and a little nervous. The words he just said were just to get closer to Ishihara. In fact, how could he underestimate Ishihara? Even in order to ensure that the other gods can be 100% successful, he did not hesitate to risk the danger to get close to Ishihara. It seems now, I succeeded. Huge joy surged into Danzo's heart, making his body tremble with excitement. He seemed to have seen Ishihara's secret technique, and he could learn whatever he wanted. Even if there is no secret technique, as long as you need it, you can order Ishihara to develop it. His strength will improve by leaps and bounds. Even mastering the Sharingan. Master the wood escape. Master the power beyond the first Hokage. Then use this power to become a Hokage. To pacify the ninja world. To unify the ninja world. His regret will be made up. His dream will be realized completely. Ha ha ha, ha ha, ga. Danzo laughed excitedly, but suddenly, his laughter stopped abruptly. The smile on his face froze. Danzo looked at Ishihara, who looked strange in front of him, and had a bad feeling in his heart. He pointed at Ishihara, his body trembling a little. "You said that if you use other ninjutsu or illusion, I can still cooperate with you." Ishihara spread his hands and said helplessly. "But I am already immune to Koto Amatsukami, I can't cooperate with you even if I want to." "What?" Danzo's face changed wildly, and his heart was horrified. He no longer cared about why Ishihara was immune to Koto Amatsukami. He now had only one thought. Run. Run far away. But the next moment, snap, a hand grabbed his head. Ishihara pressed his head slightly. "Asshole, what do you want to do?" Danzo fought hard, supporting his body and standing in place, cursing with fire in his eyes. "Kneel down," Ishihara shouted coldly, and then exerted force with his palm. Bang! The terrifying force was transmitted from the top of his head to Danzo's body, instantly making his eyes bulge and his face full of blue veins. With a bang, he knelt on the ground. A deep pit was even smashed on the ground. "Let me go!" Danzo roared angrily. His whole face became extremely hideous, and his eyes stared at Ishihara as if he wanted to kill someone. Just now he was thinking about controlling Ishihara. But now he actually kneeled down to Ishihara. It was a great shame. It made Danzo want to die. "Don't shout, there is a soundproof barrier in this yard." Ishihara sneered and grabbed Danzo's head and pulled it up hard, and Danzo's face was full of shame and anger. Slap. One slap after another hit Danzo's face. Danzo's face had become bruised and swollen, stained with blood, and even his eyes became blank. Ishihara frowned and slapped him hard. Crack. Danzo's head turned 360 degrees. Danzo's eyes stared at Ishihara, which was a bit creepy. The next moment, Danzo's body slowly dissipated. But Ishihara was not surprised at all. Because during the conversation between the two just now, Danzo quietly made a seal, and more than once. He calmly looked at the position next to him. There, Danzo reappeared, and was intact. But the moment he appeared, Danzo immediately ran out of the yard. He didn't even bother to express his inner anger. He was extremely frightened in his heart, and his face was full of fear. What kind of monster is this guy? It's okay that the god of the gods is useless, but his illusion made me unable to detect it at all, and it can completely bind my body. I was careless, I shouldn't have come in by myself. Danzo felt a little regretful. If he had known that Ishihara's illusion was so strong, he would definitely bring his subordinates in. Now he is fighting alone. Once he is hit by an illusion, he can't get rid of it at all. He can't even resist. He can't imagine how terrifying Ishihara's illusion is. Even if can cast Izanagi several times, he still doesn't feel safe in his heart. Because in front of Ishihara, he had no ability to resist. He didn't catch up. I can escape, ha ha ha. As long as I leave this barrier, I will be saved. Realizing that Ishihara behind him didn't catch up, Danzo was overjoyed and ran forward like crazy. But soon, he realized something was wrong. He froze in place. No, how long have I been running? Ishihara's yard is so small, I should have run out long ago. Did I get caught in an illusion again? Danzo was horrified, and a bone-chilling chill enveloped his heart. He didn't notice it at all. When exactly was it? Danzo was going crazy. Even the illusion of the Uchiha clan couldn't be so strong. Is this guy a monster? Danzo roared crazily in his heart. Why don't you keep running? Ishihara's voice sounded extremely clear from in front of him. It seemed like it was just 1 meter in front of him. So close. But, Danzo looked ahead with numbness, but there was no one there. The voice in his ears clearly told him that Ishihara was right in front of him. But his eyes told him that there was no one in front of him. Danzo gritted his teeth and quickly formed a seal, unblock. But the field of vision in front of me still hasn't changed at all. He looked fierce, took out a kunai and stabbed forward crazily. It's still close, if you get closer you can touch me. Take 1 step forward and thrust out again. It's just a little bit close. Take another step forward, thrust out again. A little further and you'll stab me. Danzo stopped, but the voice in his ears haunted him like a nightmare. He looked around angrily and roared crazily. Asshole Ishihara, come out if you dare. As soon as he finished speaking, Ishihara's figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Hiss. Danzo retreated wildly, distanced himself and looked at him in fear. His face was already covered with cold sweat. He didn't notice how Ishihara appeared just now. This situation is so weird. Is this still an illusion? I'm out now, what are you going to do? Ishihara looked at him teasingly. Asshole, do you think you will win? Danzo roared crazily, tore off his clothes and was about to take action. Ishihara suddenly spoke. Do you want to use the 4-elephant seal to die with me? So do you think the me standing in front of you now is my true body? Is the distance between you and me really just that small? The most important thing is, do you think you have turned on Izanagi now or not? He pointed at Danzo and smiled teasingly. Danzo's movements suddenly froze, and he was so nervous that he was sweating all over as he looked at the several Sharingan eyes that were still open on his arms. Could it be that Ishihara could use illusions to fake Izanagi even if he didn't activate it? If he didn't open it, wouldn't it be suicide to cast the 4-symbol seal? What is true and what is false? Danzo's expression was changing, he couldn't be sure at all, and his expression gradually became crazy. He quickly formed seals, performed the Izanagi technique again, and roared. I'm Danzo. I'm Konoha's assistant to the Hokage. I'm the Dark Ninja. I would rather die than be played like a monkey by you. The 4-elephant seals inside, open. Buzz. A large amount of black ink came out of Danzo's body, forming a spherical space and gradually sealing it. He looked at Ishihara, who still had a calm expression on his face, not affected by the seal at all, and the madness in his eyes turned into disappointment and frustration. He was completely fooled. Ishihara is still alive, but he is going to die. Danzo was filled with unwillingness. But, the next moment, Danzo was stunned when he looked at his complete body. He's not dead. Did he successfully perform the Izanagi technique just now? But he was not happy yet. Brush. Ishihara's figure appeared in front of him again, looking at him jokingly. Danzo, do you still have the courage to die again? Danzo was stunned for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, of course I do. Ishihara glanced at him in surprise, then stretched out his hand and said with a smile, then let's continue. Danzo died, resurrected, died, resurrected again and again in Ishihara's illusions, and the cycle continued. After each resurrection, Ishihara gave him hope, and then made him despair. Once, twice, 3 times. After the 5th resurrection, Danzo stood there in a daze, looking a little confused, and his body began to tremble. Not everyone has the courage to face death. For the first time, he could muster the courage to activate the 4 elephants seal. The second time he can put his dignity on the line. The third time he could put his pride on the line. The 4th time he could bet on. But when he was resurrected for the 5th time, his energy have been drained away. There was nothing left to support him in mustering up the courage to commit suicide again. He could only stand there shivering, looking blankly at the calm Ishihara ahead. The distance between the two was obviously only 1 meter, but it seemed like they were so far away and so far away. No matter what methods he uses, he can't touch the man in front of him. Not even close. Danzo collapsed. What do you want? After saying these words, Danzo's spine bent. He knows that he has lost. Completely defeated, not only in terms of strength, but also in spirit, he has completely surrendered. What do you want? After Danzo said this, he suddenly noticed that the surrounding environment had undergone some subtle changes. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.